perfect. Let's go. If you wanted, you could get it. Let me know. Let me know. Welcome to the live, guys. This is gonna be a good conversation. So let's jump right into it. Are mulattoes addicted to FBA culture? So we were talking backstage, and I say they're addicted to us. Okay, that's my perception. It's like, but Georgia, you think that it's a two-way, unhealthy, like codependent, weird relationship we have with FBA culture. But I want to say that first of all, mulattoes are everywhere. Look, there's this little thing. I'm sharing my screen right now. This is like from the 1400s about how mulattoes are all over Africa, mulatto communities in Africa, South America, UK, America. Like there's mulatto communities all over. So are they going to claim, oh, you're addicted to the like that? They're coming together, creating their own cultures and stuff. So it doesn't even make sense to because they have their own identities, and that's something that we're fighting for here. We're going to create our own culture so we can we're claiming our identity so we can build our own culture. So that's our goal here in America. So and people say that we're too addicted to the culture to even claim our own identity. So it's a problem, it's the issue. So let's talk about it. So go ahead, Georgia. What do you think about what you think about that? I thought your take was interesting.
Oh, you're talking to me,
Yeah,
Magic?
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So I think that it's essentially a two-way street with us and them. It's
Mm-hmm.
more so that we are addicted to FBA culture, and they're also
Mm-hmm.
likewise addicted to us. Because as
Exactly.
I've kind of laid out the stat before, and I'll continue to reinforce it, is that you got to remember us with our specific mix, we are 3 times more likely to be Black identifying,
Mm-hmm.
especially given the fact that a lot of us will flat out say that, you know what, hey, I'm a Black man, I'm a Black woman, because of how it's just going to be something that's going to draw more attention, and it's going to draw you more clout, and it's going to draw you more resources too. Because let's also just put it this way, you are going to gain more clout, more attention, and more resources if you and I were to say that we are Black men and women who came from people who are racially disenfranchised, which is true. But are we going to gain that same level? Are we going to produce that same effect if we were to say that we are actually biracial or mixed race individuals who have been racially alienated from both sides of the aisle? You're just not. It's just not going to produce the same effect. So therefore, a lot of us feel the need to be Black identifying to finally feel included, to finally feel that we can gain the resources and the same level of clout that the Black community carries. We don't have that. But then also at the same time, they're very addicted to us because they find us very physically attractive. They find us exotic. And they find us to be people that they can honestly even use too, to their advantage.
Great points, honestly. Those are some great points because it is a numbers
Exactly.
game because we feel like we don't really have the numbers, the clout, the to really like that's why it's so important that we build our own communities. It's vital for us, okay? Because we have to go to other communities in order to feel like we have a sense of protection or a sense of inclusion because we don't have our own. Like all I want for us is to have our own where we could tell our stories. We could cater to our own audience. Like have instead of always trying to cater to an audience that really doesn't really identify with us like that. If you know, so I do want us to have our own. So I'll
Precisely.
give people that. They are very accepting. It's kind. Now it's threatening their community. Shake my head. Yep. That's what people say a lot. Yep. I agree. I gain so much more aligning myself with Black people. It's good and bad at the same time. Mixed people don't got my back, to be honest. Exactly. We don't do this. See, let's talk about I think of the Shinquella Robinson, the Shinquella case. Black people went hard. They made sure like that case was come to the forefront and that they were like, okay, we're gonna bring justice. Like when it's time for Black people to unite to bring justice for their people that's been wrongly done, they unite. Like they put all this shit aside. And I think that's awesome. Like I love that about Black culture. I love that. Like I think that's the most but mixed people, are we gonna do that based on the fact we're all mixed or are all biracial or all mulatto or
We,
whatever?
we are
No.
not going to do
We're not
that.
gonna do that. We're not gonna do that at all.
Like
So
it's just because like I'm not going to exactly say her name though, but she's the owner of this um quote unquote biracial group on like Facebook, and me and her
uh
have actually had another civil discourse, but she flat out at times calls herself a black woman, which is why a lot of people have left your group and say that you might as well call your group just unapologetically black. And obviously, she's not going to really advocate for me. She's not going to support my platform on Instagram because of how I've made it abundantly clear is that this space, my community, mainly caters to those who are like us, in which we are going to call ourselves mix, or more better yet, mulatto, 24/7, 365 days of the week. There is no code switching. There is no calling of ourselves black or calling ourselves white. We are what we are, and that's just it. And then, let alone, given the fact is that I am still all about separation, as much as people do not really like that S word. That's something that she can't get on board with. But if I were in trouble, she's probably not going to come to my aid at all because of how I spat out that kind of rhetoric.
One thing that I do agree upon is that before mixed people can be united, that each one in their own individual subgroups needs to be united among themselves. Because, for example, if mulattoes cannot unite among themselves, how can they unite with the biracial and multiracial community as a whole? I mean,
You can't.
Exactly.
okay, you
Exactly.
can't. No,
I agree.
exactly. The key is unite within your own subgroup, whether it be mulattoes, whether it be golden spear, whether it be MGNs. Guys, please forgive me because I don't know all the terms for all the different groups. Okay, but everyone needs, should try to unite if they can within their own subgroups, but also be mindful that there's going to be some people that no matter what, they're not going to see the need to unite within the individual subgroups.
I agree. I agree. And we, first of all, we are in a unique situation because we have a hard time claiming our identity because we get a lot of backlash. Like we don't even know what to call ourselves. With like some people are offended by mulatto, some people don't like biracial, some people. I like mulatto. I'm going with mulatto. I like it the most, to be honest. And
Like I said, though, you're going to have people who are going to think that saying
yeah, we're in a
African
unique
American is
situation.
like using the N word.
Yeah. So how can we all unite when we don't even agree upon, like, we don't really have a shared identity like that? So that's our fight. That's our plight that is unique to us, that we have. We gotta figure out what's our identity. We're figuring out ourselves first, and like, what are we gonna call ourselves, and who are we? Like, we have so much more. We have a unique flight plight that we need to figure out, and in order for us to really unite, because it's a lot. Like, it's overwhelming sometimes, honestly. But I think it's very important for us to really come together. But I do want to talk about things I do like, because I think that if we're gonna build a culture, it's gonna be the best of both worlds, right? It's gonna be because we're white and black, right? But that guy said, "What do you guys? I want to know your guys' opinion." But what he said, to separate from whiteness and blackness as much as possible, because both white America and black America is screwed. But I think that's on us to take the best of both worlds and melt it together and build our own culture from it. That's a unique mixture of both. So, you know
Of
what my
course.
favorite things about black culture is? One of my favorite aspects, because I think when people think, oh, we're addicted to like FBA, they're like talking about like hip hop and rap, which I can live without. Honestly, I like it. It's fine, but like I could live without it. It's not like It's not my favorite thing about black culture or FBA culture. My favorite thing about like FBA culture is like soulful, like gospel music, like the soul music. Like, that's my favorite thing. I think that is the most beautiful music ever. I love it.
Along
And
with blues, too. We
I
cannot
love,
forget about
yeah,
our
those
good
are
blues. We can't.
there's totally different aspects of like black culture that I'm totally like, I think it's beautiful, but like rap and hip hop being in the forefront of it, I don't think it's the best aspect of black culture. I think it's the worst aspect being showcased of black culture. And people think we're addicted to that, but it's like, no, I can live without that. Like, honestly, I'm cool. I'm good. Like, that's pushing the worst elements of black culture. Like, there's so much that I don't think I'm addicted to that part of black culture, to be honest. I don't think I'm addicted to any part of it,
Um,
honestly, but I like there's so many good things I love about black culture, of course, that I want to, preserve and keep as well. So, yeah. Go ahead, Jose.
mhm. One thing I do admire regarding the African American culture is their spirit of perseverance. Because when you think about all that they went through for the last 400 years, first of all, you know, being enslaved for 250 years, and then how you have to deal with segregation and Jim Crow, and then how there's a lot of internal struggles within the African American community, and with all that taken into consideration, you know, the fact that they've been able to persevere, that's something that's very admirable regarding them.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why I don't. I like I said this on Anthony's stream. I'll say this forever. Anybody who's trying to instill like a victim mindset in the black people after all they've overcome to this point is anti-black. Okay, at the end of the day, like there's so much perseverance that black people have overcome. You can't say that they don't have any power. Like that's crazy. Like that's crazy talk. Like that's craziness. I feel like black people are
Well,
very powerful people. And I said that somebody tried to argue with me on Anthony's stream, talk about no, we didn't got no power, we don't got no power, we don't got no power. And I'm like, y'all are so full of shit. I don't believe that. Like
well,
that
but
part of black culture has to go. The whole victim narrative that we are powerless and we're just repressed and we have no, black people have overcome so much and are very powerful to do that. Like that part of black culture, yeah, I'm leaving that behind. Okay, we don't need that for
but
real.
you know,
Okay.
magic. I have a theory behind that, and the theory is the following: um, if you're constantly playing the role of the victim, uh, you are escaping accountability for your actions. So, as long as you're playing the victim, as long as you're always casting the blame on other people, there's going to be no motivation to try to improve yourselves. Okay, and I see this as an outsider. Okay, because it's
Mhm.
very easy to say, "Woe is me, woe is me," what have you. But again, as I stated, considering all the stuff that the African American community has endured, they have they have a huge spirit of endurance. So therefore, they have power. The problem is how to apply that power.
Exactly. It's the misuse of power. But this is what okay, us mulattoes as a community that we're building, we have to learn from the mistakes of the communities that we are come from. So us as a community, we have to make sure that we can take accountability for ourselves. Okay, we have to be like, okay, we make mistakes, and we can take criticism from our community. People, we're not no community is perfect. Okay, if we're fucking up and somebody says, hey, if they're like an outsider looking in and they see, hey, we got to learn how to take criticism and be like, all right, we'll look into that instead of being like so defensive and taking it personally. Because I hate how people are like, if you try to criticize a community or a group or a culture, or anything, it's like all of a sudden you hate like every single person of that community and culture, and it's like no, obviously not. Like that's so stupid to even be like that. I don't know why people think like that. Like you have any criticism, oh, you must hate them all. Like that's so dumb. But I think that
Um,
us as a community, we got to make sure accountability is so important. We got to value that because how are we going to advance? Like we are so far behind. Like we're probably the most far behind. We don't have our own identity. We don't have our. We got so much work to do. We got to be able to self correct and be like, look at ourselves. Okay, if we're not going the right direction, okay, because we can't sit here and just be in denial for 20 years and just not do any make any changes because we don't have time for that. Like we got to really get it together like as fast as possible so we can move up and not be
Our
on no victim.
mentality, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
our mentality should be we are meant to be victors, not victims. That in itself can also become a cultural aspect because if people start noticing a pattern among us in which we think that, well, no, we're not going to walk around with some persecution or victim complex. We're going to walk around with a victor complex. So,
Exactly. That's what
irrespective of who is oppressing us or whatever, oh, well, you actually have a civic duty now to become that victor. It just takes the right faith, the right works in order to do things that are conducive to that victor complex or the results of which a victor would produce.
period. We gotta have that winner mindset. Hey, what's up, Aunt? Welcome to the stream. Thank you for coming up.
Hey, what's up? I'm a little late, but How's
You
everybody doing?
good. You good. I'm loving this conversation though, because this
Welcome,
is how
man.
we build
Hey, what's up?
our own culture. Like, and a bluish said something good too. He said most black Americans are Christian, eat swine, celebrate white people's holidays, and I don't follow any of that mess. I just do me. I feel like I feel the same way. I feel like I have like Christian values because I was raised up Christian. I know that in the black community, Christian is that is a big part of the culture is Christianity for sure. But I feel like I don't know. When I went through my pro-back phase, they kind of got me out of the Christian because it's like, oh, the white man's religion. It was beaten to us as slaves. That kind of got me away from Christianity a little. It kind of made me look at things different, like the white Jesus and all that. Like I feel like I have Christian values, like treat people how you want to be treated, and all those like good values I feel like are important. But going by the religion itself, I don't really claim any real religion, to be honest. That's not really. I don't know. I know Christian. I know you're a Christian, George, and that's cool. I respect all religions, But me personally, I don't know. I like Christian values though. I do like Jesus and what he's preached and all that good stuff. But I don't know. I don't really feel like if that's a part of black culture, I don't know. That's not really something I really
Well,
Hey,
I
Matt. Hey, Matt.
like.
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Like oh go ahead. What'd you say?
Well, one thing you see, one thing that me and Jojo have in common with both Christians, the problem is the message of the gospel is very simple, and basically it's crystallized into two commandments: love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and being, and love your neighbor as yourself. The problem is you have people that take a simple message of the gospel and they twist it and they transform it and then they misapply it to extent when it could be a huge turnoff to a lot of people who were, if they were given the gospel as is taught without all the different filters that we put in, more people will be more receptive. I think Jojo will agree with me on that.
Yeah, that's what you call buffet Christianity, Jose. Is that you might take some other stuff, you may cherry pick stuff and turn it into your own while ignoring everything else that may actually contradict what you're trying to push for.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But Aunt, I want to ask you a question. So I was talking about before, like about FBA culture, and I was thinking if we're gonna build a culture like mulatto people, we're gonna take the best of both cultures that we know, which is white and black culture, American culture, right?
right.
So it's like we're gonna take out the best. And I was saying how I like soul music, and I was saying how like when people think of FBA culture, they think of like rap and hip hop. But I'm like, that's like the worst of black culture, honestly, isn't it? Promoting drugs, violence, sex, hoes,
Exactly.
that's the worst of like why would we want to take that with it if we're gonna build our own culture? We're not I don't think any of us here are addicted to like rap, hip hop, and fucking all that
Yeah,
bullshit.
exactly.
We're
People want to
not
hold
addicted.
that.
There's way better aspects of black culture that I would want to preserve and keep, and that is near and dear to me that I love. But rap and hip hop, I could live without it any day. It's cool,
I
it's
don't
fun
even
every
really
once in a
listen to
while.
that. Like,
It's
honestly, I
fun.
might listen to it if I'm in the gym, but other
Yeah,
than that, like, I'm not
exactly.
listening
I'll
to
listen
that
to it every
garbage.
once in a while, but there's so much other music out there that I love too. I can't imagine just listening that 24/7 and not listening to anything else. Like that would no. No, that would be so
Okay,
toxic.
No, I'm not listening to that.
well,
No.
What's the
Oh yeah,
topic
I'll
you know,
drop
again?
the link. Yeah. The
but you know
topic
something.
is oh wait, hold on. This is what people accuse us that we're too addicted to FBA culture to have our own communities and have our own culture. But I feel like that's some bullshit.
No, that's not
So
true at all.
exactly.
That's a laughable, honestly.
What up, 18th letter?
Hey,
What's going
Hi,
on,
Rakim.
Maggie?
Hey,
Al.
welcome
Hi,
aboard.
Al. How
Hi.
you guys
Hey,
doing?
JoJo, how you doing, brother? How's everything going? Shout out to my
How's it
beautiful
Wonderful
wife,
well.
Jose.
going? Welcome aboard,
And the
guys.
Al
Thank you
show
for
is here.
joining us.
How's it going, Al?
Hi, Al.
Welcome aboard.
Hello, how are you? How's
Um,
everybody go? How's everybody doing?
doing pretty well.
Oh, fine.
Exactly,
Fantastic.
exactly. So I wanted to do the stream just for us to have a voice because so many people tell us this, you're this, they're to this, they're to that, and they give us so many reasons why we're not going to have our own, why we're not going to have our own identity, or we're not going to have our own community, we're not going to have our own culture, and all these reasons. So I just wanted to speak on and address some things that
Mm,
people feel like hold us back. That oh yeah, like
right,
we're too addicted to FBA culture to be able. But I think that's something
right.
that we could easily like like debunk basically. Like
So
no,
I'm
it's
Well,
not
can,
true.
curious. The
can I
term
speak
Hmm.
on that?
FBA.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Oh wait, hold on. I'm gonna let 18th go, and then I'm gonna let you go, Al.
All
Sorry.
right, go ahead.
Well, first and foremost, I gotta say, I don't know who like, because like I say, I don't really be venturing a lot of spaces. There's only a few spaces that I visit in YouTube. I did hear you say. I just wanted to address one thing with hip hop. What you were saying. I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between commercialized hip hop and underground hip hop. Um, all hip hop don't promote drugs and violence. Actually, when I was coming up, especially in the '90s, it was a lot of messages to it, and a lot of hip hop related to the black struggle. Tupac talked about, the black struggle and everything that was going on within within America that black people was dealing with. People like Nas, people like Queen Latifah, people like Common, people like Talib Kweli, Most Def, the Fugees. So it's a lot of things in hip hop that I don't know if people just watching what they see on drill music and stuff on videos, but it's a lot more to hip hop than just that. Hip hop started in the streets of the Bronx, and it was actually started as an outlet for the youth who didn't have anything, and now it's become a multi-million dollar or multi-billion dollar industry, created
I
right there in
agree
the
with that.
slums of the
No,
South
you're
Bronx.
right.
So,
You're right. Like how hip hop started and like the roots of hip hop. And I wanted to talk about too. I think about that all the time, how it got commercialized and then like people say that, the record labels they started paying people to like promote drugs, violence, sex, and that's what's popularized and that's what's mainstream. But there's so many like conspiracy theories behind that. Like, that's trying to, white black people out and pharmaceutical company. You know how Future's very popular, how he doesn't do drugs. Like he's admitted he doesn't do drugs, but that's all he talks about is drugs because supposedly pharmaceutical companies like pay rappers to push these type of things so they could profit off of it. So there's a lot of like conspiracy theories behind that. Like why I think it's true. Like it's true. Like so many people are pushing these agendas to black people so they can promote, them killing each other and all this crazy stuff. But yeah, I do agree. Like the roots of hip hop are beautiful, amazing, lovely, gorgeous. I
mhm.
love it very much. I totally agree. But how I feel like it is a loss and it's sad how it got commercialized and just promoting the worst like in popular music. It is popular. That's what most people think. So yeah, it's sad. But yeah, go ahead, Al. I'd love to hear your opinion now.
Well, one thing I
Well,
would say too, I don't.
Hold on, let Al go. Let Al
Oh,
go.
okay.
I'll let you go. Go ahead,
Well,
Al.
first and foremost, the title of the live is FBA culture. So by FBA, before getting into it intensely, by FBA, that's Foundational Black American, right? That's Tariq Nasheed's outfit. So that's sort of this idea of, I don't know, African American, when FBA is an offshoot of ADOS. Essentially, it's his version of ADOS. Um, just so that I have, just so that we have some kind of structural idea of what we're referring to. First and foremost, one of the things I would say is biracial people, black, white, biracial specifically, have something akin to culture in places like South Africa with the quote unquote colored population. There, they have a culture per se. So, in terms of a sort of biracial culture in the United States, that's interesting because I think that's something that needs to be looked into, right? One of the things, when you look at the history of this country, is we know that there were not only the mulatto designation on census forms, but we also know that there were organizations and groups and institutions of biracial, black, white, biracial people in places like Charleston, South Carolina, in places like New Orleans, Louisiana. That even to this day, that places like New Orleans or in Louisiana, there's still that remnant there of mixed race people. So um, I think first and foremost, you have to look at what is this biracial American culture. And then you can sort of look at, okay, how does it compare to African American culture or subculture, really? I think part of that would be looking at how they stack up to each other, right? How do they look at each other? How, what are their distinctions? What are their contrasts? What are their differences? I think that's important if we're
We
going to
don't
look
even
at.
know. We're not too familiar with these cultures though. That's the thing. That's why everyone's like, "Oh, you don't really have a culture and everything." But okay, here's another point I wanted to talk about how, biracial mulatto Americans have contributed a lot to black culture, but it's so disrespectful because I feel like we'll never get credited for none of it. Well, we won't, and it's okay. I'm not going to sit here and fight about it or cry about I don't really care, but I just know that's why we need our own identity so we can,
Mm,
our accomplishments that we do have, we could feel like we're credited for it, and people are not trying to take away our accomplishments and be like, no, no, they're
mhm,
not, they're not, no, like, no, they're because we are there's a difference between being biracial and being black, and that's okay. Like, there's nothing
mhm,
wrong with saying because I've like people like Phil Valentine, like he was like in the pro black spaces, and I pointed out also, wow, he's like a mixed race. I love that he's like helping black culture and black people, and people told me that that's offensive for me to say that he's mixed race, and it's like what?
I just
And
wanted to say
that's
one
crazy.
thing. I just
Yeah,
wanted
go
to
ahead,
say
18
one thing
letter.
real quick
Yeah, of
because I
course.
noticed like with a lot of you guys having these conversations, it usually be. Only thing I just wanted to say is don't pay attention to. It's a lot of stupid people online. You guys
Oh, for sure. I
don't
agree.
don't pay attention to what an ignorant person says.
I
As
agree.
far as what they don't know anything. They're in the confines of that basement
But that's something that's very
on a
prevalent. Like that's something that's very prevalent that it's offensive to claim that you're biracial or mixed. Like that's something that a lot of us deal with. It's not just like one person on the internet. It's like so many of us. So that's something I feel like we wish that we want to be we want our identity to be respected more in black culture and black community because we've contributed so much to it. And we love black people, like we that's why we've done so much for black
some
people and especially in
some.
America. So that's all we're saying. We just want our identity to be respected within black culture. That's what we want. That's what I want,
but that's
honestly.
really that's fundamentally an impossibility
It's an
because
impossibility.
But I'm trying to figure.
biracial people are trying to some. This is the problem. This is part of the contradiction that goes on, or the problem that goes on, is that a number of biracial people are trying to get credit for contributions to a
They're
cult,
not gonna give
to
us
a
credit. I don't feel like they.
subculture and a community that doesn't need them. See, the dangerous part now is you see that mixed race people are being appropriated within African American history now. What you're seeing in the US and even in the UK to a certain extent is people that were of mixed race that were groundbreaking or important are now being seen, or who passed even, to bring that up, to bring that up, or who passed even, are now being seen as black people. They're now being seen
Hmm.
in the context of African Americans. So there's an appropriation. This is one of the reasons I've said that, you know, biracial people, especially black, white, biracial people, you've got to have a history that is your own. You have to be able to have a construct and a framework that you're working for that is your own. Because at this point, you're getting appropriated within a community that really fundamentally doesn't really need it's not necessary for them, right?
Hmm.
It's not necessary to like what you were saying before. You were saying that it's frustrating to be not to be acknowledged
Hmm.
and not to be uh, honored maybe or signified. Some of that's
Exactly.
happening, but it's being happened within the context of simply being black people,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah,
the
that's
problem.
something that's so important. ATL, this is what I want. A lot of people, there's a lot of misunderstanding about us that we are trying to build our
Oh
own
yeah.
communities
Well,
and have our own
again,
identities based off trying to separate from blackness and black people. And that it's not really about that because we love black people. We embrace our blackness. There's been a long history of us going
I
hard
do
for
believe
black
some of
people.
that. I do believe some of that is about that, depending on the
No, but listen,
individual.
listen, listen. This is what it's mostly about. Yes, some of it could be about that. Some people that, but I think it's mostly 100% about we want to have our own identity so we can have like a history, so we could be like, oh, this is what, this was a biracial person like me or a mulatto person like me who's done this. Like, we want to be able to like pinpoint like what have we done throughout history and be able to say, hey, feel those types of accomplishments. If we always go by, it's like our history is buried in Black history, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like we just want to be able to have that identity, to have that kind of distinction of like, hey, what are we doing? Like, what were we
Can I
doing?
speak to
And
that real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say the reason why it's embedded in Black history, like I said once again on
One
these
drop
panels,
rule.
it had nothing to do with Black people. I mean, for
It's one
instance,
drop rule. Yeah, of course
like,
no, you're right.
but
Of course it didn't.
but
It
the
was a
funny
one drop
thing
rule.
is, like, the crazy thing is, it seems like I see once again, I see all of this smoke for Black people when Black people are not the ones that make the laws or create the rules in this
What
country.
is
A lot
smoke?
of,
What
huh?
smoke we got
No,
for Black people?
well, not you in particular, but Bluish. I visit your channel quite a few times, and I already know. I
Well,
know.
here's what you're not understanding. Here's what you're not understanding. You're referring to the one drop rule, but that's
This
not what's what's really being discussed now. That's a whole separate aspect. That's status, right? Legal status. We're talking about the historical status of mixed race people. And what's happening now is that mixed race people are being appropriated. Those that were mixed or even past are being appropriated as Black people. And that is going on
Well,
now.
let me let
And
me let
so
me
that
let me
does
correct
have
let me
something to
correct you
do
on
with
one
that.
something. Let me correct you on one because you just brought up history, right? All of the things that was done from biracial people in the past, and that was when the one drop rule was in effect. It wasn't Black people that was classifying them as Black. It was the white dominant white
But
society
now, yeah,
that
you're
had
Well,
did
totally
well,
that.
right.
And
again,
You're you're totally
again,
right from the
that's
like
not the
historical
point.
aspect.
That's not what that's not the discussion.
okay, can I
The
finish really
discussion
quickly?
is the
Okay, let me finish one
appropriation
second, sir.
of biracial
Um,
people into that historical matrix. That's
well,
the issue, not the one drop rule.
is it appropriation if at that particular time period they were considered Black? Is that
But the
appropriation?
issue,
Because
no, the issue is that it's still being upheld
Yeah, it is
today.
now.
If I say
right,
like
It would
like I
now, but
said,
it's not relevant.
I went to these spaces and it's like, oh, it's offensive to claim that it's like the one drop rule is still being upheld today. That's the problem. That's the issue. That it's like, hey, especially Black people are mostly the ones upholding it, and it's like, let's let it go. Like, white people started this bullshit, right?
okay, here's the
And
thing: Black people, like we said, we talked about this once before. It's because it has been cultural within. Nobody's
but
going
we
to
could
change their
change. We
no
could
wait.
change
Nobody's going to
that. You
change
don't think
their
culture could
mindset.
change?
No, nobody's going to change their mindset
Oh Lord.
overnight. Magic, like as
Oh
far
yeah,
as
I
like
agree. It's
if
not
that's
gonna
the
happen overnight.
pe-
That's why it's
people,
important for us to
but
speak
and
up.
the reason why a lot of white people don't focus on it because white people don't think about biracial people at all. They kind of just dump biracial people off on the Black community and went about their businesses, especially with illegitimate pregnancies, the history of white men creeping into the Black community,
White
dealing
people are
with
the ones creating us too, though. They're creating us too. So it's like they don't
yeah, but
completely.
I don't
We
see
have white parent. I have a whole
I
white
get you,
parent.
but I
So
don't see a lot of white people. Maybe it's just me, but I don't see a lot of white people speaking up for the biracial community as far as
who
creating.
else is speaking up for us? Not too many people will speak up at us. We are
Yeah,
completely,
like
basically
there's hardly
invisible
like
in this
anybody though who will
community.
ever like
Barely anybody.
advocate for
Yeah,
us on our behalf.
but every
That's just
people
not
don't
going to
even
happen. We
advocate
can
for
only speak.
themselves.
It's
Barely.
not going to happen though because like you. So I'm actually glad you brought that up, Magic though,
Yeah.
because you notice how everybody. So on my Instagram, I've noticed how okay, a lot of people are expressing their outrage over Elon Musk taking over Twitter because of how there's now been a surge of derogatory terms and abusive behavior being directed against Black Twitter and also LGBT Twitter. But when my page was raided by neo-Nazi types on my Instagram page, in which I actually had to block over 30 accounts, by the way, and report them all, no one stuck up for me. No one stuck up for biracial or mixed race identity.
Me.
No
I
one
did.
did.
Haha.
And I
I
also,
did.
yeah, except for you and a lot of Mermaid and a couple of others. You guys
We
most
barely stick
definitely
up for
did.
ourselves.
But
Yeah, that's the
but
issue.
you guys have also pinpointed other examples of abusive behavior being directed against us. But if we were gay or lesbian or black or Jewish, oh, you
We would
can
have the same
imagine an
community.
outpouring level of people going over to their aid. But
That's why we
who's
want to
going to come
build
to our aid?
that.
No
That's
one.
why we still working so hard. What's up, Lynn? Thank you for jumping on here tonight. What up? What up, Lynn?
I wasn't gonna come on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna come on because I like to stay my Blasian self out of mulattoes people's business, but I just had to come up since I find it very disrespectful to continuously bring up our ancestors because I feel like so many people do it for clout. None of us were there. How would any of us know what was going on? And I feel like regardless of whether the one drop rule was put in place and implemented by white people, why is it now in 2022 Black people are insistent on upholding it? Just
Right.
because the white man put it in place does not mean it is law. You can call me Black until you are blue in the face. And when I mean Black, I don't mean you're calling me part Black. I mean you're calling me just Black. You can say that to your blue in the face, and I'm gonna still always be Blasian. You feel me?
Well, it doesn't really concern me one way or the other. The
Period.
only thing
It
the
does
only
concern
thing
her. It does. It affects her,
wait,
and
wait,
she's an
wait.
ally for us,
I'm
and I
not
appreciate it.
I'm not going against anybody. I don't know what this negative energy is here. I
No,
always
no,
show respect.
listen, you do, and we appreciate you. It's just, like I said, like, no, I agree with you about it. It's not going to change overnight, like the whole one drop rule
Because people
and
listen, no
upholding it.
matter
It's not.
what I'm
I
saying is
agree.
that no matter what Black people say, Black people is not holding is not able to keep biracials within the Black community. Okay, no matter what they
Hmm.
say, I'm not talking about words here. I'm talking about
Hmm.
actions. Black people are not able to keep biracial people within the Black community. If you want to look at actions, you look at what Meghan Markle went through with the royal family. Okay, Meghan Markle is racially ambiguous. She didn't identify as Black, and you saw the turmoil that she went through within the Black community.
So
Those are the people.
can I ask you a question then?
Go ahead.
So when does it stop? Because if we meet in person and you're like, oh, blah blah blah, because my Black sister, and I go, oh, I'm not Black, I'm Blasian, and
See, this
given
is
the
the thing.
opportunity,
See.
I can correct you.
Okay,
So
here's the thing.
do I not
You
correct people? Do I not educate people?
you can correct people, and you can correct people all that you want. But like I said, when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of years of brainwashing, you're not going to
And
be able. And you're talking to
I hear
people.
you and I get that,
Okay,
but do
wait.
you
Can I
not?
finish real quick? Can I finish my response? When you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of years of brainwashing, and you're going up to people in their 30s and 40s, those people come from a time period where biracial people was considered Black. I'm sorry that things have changed within your mindset, but just because things have changed within your mindset, don't mean that the environment changes overnight. That's the only thing I'm saying.
I agree with you. I
Well,
mean, it's
to
not going to
be
change overnight,
well,
but yeah, go ahead,
well,
Al.
let's just note this. It's not hundreds and hundreds of years. If you look at the history of mixed race people, Black, white, biracial people in this country, they the so-called mulatto was on census forms, which meant that they were seen as a distinct people, at least legally, according to the U.S. Census and the U.S. law. That changed in the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century, in the 20th century. So we're not talking about hundreds of years. We're talking about maybe 100 years. And we're also talking about, since we're talking about one drop law, we also have to look at the fact that it seems to be to the point of why it still is a force. It seems that a number of African Americans are conditioned and socialized to see mixed race people and biracial people as Black. And
Okay.
I've talked to I've talked to African Americans who understand that biracial people are biracial, and they don't get why there are a number of Black people even now that hang on to biracial people, that still insist on seeing biracial people, Black, white biracial people, or Black other biracial people, as to include Blasian as well, and others, as Black. They don't get
Mm.
it. Now, if those individuals who clearly understand mixed race people and they understand what mixed race is and biracial is, if they get it and they don't understand why some others don't, it really indicates that it's been a conditioning and socializing force within that community. Why that is, I don't know precisely, but that's the conclusion that I came to after
Um,
being on social media groups, biracial social media groups over the years, over 10
And
years. I
All
what I
right.
realized was It's something that is ingrained within that community. Why that is, I don't know. What the pull
Well,
or the
Well,
why
effect
it
go ahead.
is
is.
Wait,
because
hold on.
it's been
Let Lynn go ahead because Kevin's trying to go up, and Lynn said she wanted to make a point, and then she was going to jump off so I could let Kevin up. So go ahead,
Okay,
Lynn.
thank you. I think honestly, hold on, let me get out the bathroom. I think that it's very lazy for people to keep going, oh, well, because to me, it just, I'm sorry, but do you know my family is very racist, both sides. Like, I am Dominican, Jamaican, and Korean. My family's racist. I was taught to be racist. I think it is
yeah, I can kind
insanity
of
to
tell
sit.
a little bit.
No, you can't tell because you don't know me. So pump your brakes and slow down. Okay. I think it is insane when people sit there and say, or try to make excuses for why they cannot decolonize their mind. Don't try to call me racist on trying to be shady because I'm the last person you may want to be calling racist since I fight very hard for Black representation, Black people. I'm not one of those people that is complicit in running around calling people that are mixed Black. I'm not doing that. I'm not over here erasing real Black people's identities. I'm not doing that. Um, so when I listen to people go, oh, well, because of the one drop rule, and oh, because of slavery, and oh, because of this, okay, my ancestors were slaves too. They were
Yeah,
slaves
sweetheart,
too.
but you don't
And
have
so,
origins in this country.
yes,
You
I
have
do.
origins in the
Yes, I do.
Caribbean.
Yes, I do. I was born in America, and it doesn't matter. I was born in America. I come from a
No, you
military
don't know the
family.
history and the
I
concepts
don't
of
know
this
the
country.
history of the
You know,
country that I grew up in. So do you see how
it's a lot of
pretentious
people
you
that
are?
don't. It's a
No,
lot of people that don't.
you
It's
don't
people
get to.
that have generations here that still don't know the
Okay,
history,
see, this is what
the
happens when
concept.
you lead with emotions and your feelings, because every time you lead with emotions
My
and your
God.
feelings, you're never going to be able to look at the facts. Unless, I don't understand where there are so many people who, in modern time, they're just blatantly ignoring facts. Even if someone's coming up to you and saying, hey, listen, I literally have a white mother and a Black father, and then you are choosing to look at them and go, just Black, you are being racist. Like, that has nothing to do with, oh,
Being
because of
racist,
slavery.
sweetheart, you don't
And
know what racist is. If you think that's being racist, just making an assumption. Do you
no,
understand what racist is?
that's literally being racist. If I'm sitting here telling you that I am Blasian and you take it upon yourself to basically tell me, no, you're not Blasian. Actually, you're Black. Why are you doing that? You think
Um,
what is that? That's racism. Why? Because it's tied to the
if you
one
think
drop
that's what
rule.
racism is, sweetheart, then you're gonna
So
have a
is the one
long
That's
way
drop
to
the
rule
go
point
not
of the
becoming
one
a
racist?
drop
biracial.
rule. The one drop rule is racist. So if we're going by the one drop
It's
rule, that's
it's
going
okay,
by
Magic, because
racism.
this just goes to show what I be talking about when I say just the whole one drop rule in general is a fallacy. It's a fallacy,
Mm.
and people still
You're right.
subscribe to it and they still uphold it. And look, people are trying to justify it right now and say that we are not Black people. You will never ever come far enough to be able to think on your own clearly because your mind will always be
Oh,
colonized.
there go that racism right there.
Wow.
There go that
Colonized.
Okay,
racism
we
in
don't
All
there.
We
right.
understand
gotta let
You
we
So
gotta
have to say that.
decolonize our mind. All right,
so
Lynn.
Hey,
like what
okay.
I wanted to
I'll let
also
Kevin
Can I
say,
just
say.
like
say? Can I just say
really
something really quick,
Hi,
JoJo? I
Kevin.
just want to say something really
How you
quick.
doing, Kevin?
What she just said
hey
right
Kevin.
there was a complete insult because your mind are colonized. Duh. All of our minds are colonized. We were enslaved. We're
But we
the
can do the
ancestors of
work to
enslaved
decolonize our
people.
mind. That's a
Well,
lot
And
of people.
here's the
hold
We
on
can
one second. I just
reality.
want to
decolonize.
finish my statement. I
Hold
just
on.
want to
No,
finish
no,
my
no,
statement.
no. You're
Go
always saying
ahead.
hold on. You're always saying hold on. We
Oh my
were not
God.
enslaved. I
Say again?
mentioned the people on this panel were not.
We weren't slaves. We were
We,
not
we
So
come
let's
from a
get that
slavery.
history
straight.
of
No, I'm
slave
talking about
ancestry,
us
sir.
right now.
Well,
Like our
you
I
didn't,
understand
ancestors
but
me as
I
an
did
don't.
that.
individual. Listen. Me as an
What?
individual, I have a great job. I own my own home, different things like that.
You're
That
doing
still doesn't
well.
equate to what has transpired that has gotten us to this point. If you don't study the past, how would you know how to go farther to the
Well,
future?
But I'm
actually,
saying we have a lot of
we're
power
talking
right now
about the
today.
past
We're
here.
more empowered
And
than
so
our
the
ancestors were.
past that we're talking about relates to those of us who are mixed race and biracial. See, we have our history, our own history, and that's what's important for us. We need to
Mhm.
not only find our history, but we need to know our history, and we need to make sure that we safeguard our history so that we are not colonized, that we are not appropriated, that we are not plucked out and just seen as subsidiaries or accessories to monoracial people. That's the problem I was talking about, and it's nothing
Okay,
to do
that's a good
purely
point.
with one drop rule. It has to do with who we are as a people. It has to do with who our status is. that we as individuals, we as a group, that's what we're fighting for here. That is what we are about. That's why we're here on YouTube. That's why we're here on Facebook or whatever other groups we're on or anywhere else or Instagram. That's why we're here. And see, I'm not terribly interested when you talk about one drop rule, that's a separate matter. That's a separate matter. That isn't even of interest. What's of interest is how do we build? We're going to talk about it from a cultural perspective. We also have to look at our culture and we have to look at our history, thus our history. And we cannot allow ourselves to be colonized, to be appropriated, to be mischaracterized, to be hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray. We can't allow that. And so if monoracial people don't understand that, it's not necessary. We as biracial people, we as mixed race people have to understand it. This is why we're here. Whether there's those of us here don't understand that or not. That is why we are here. That is why we are here. We have to fight. We're in a society that doesn't entirely recognize it. It's weird and it's strange and it's wrong, but it's true. And if we didn't have that as an issue, we wouldn't have to come on live streams like this. We wouldn't have to be on YouTube. We could just be talking about other stuff, just talking about cultural aspects. We could be talking about various aspects that other groups can do. But we aren't able to do that in time because we have to fight for everything. We have to, people talk about build. We're the ones that have to build. We have to build. We have to create the plateau and the construct and the framework. We have to do it. So I'm not interested in
Big
getting off
facts.
into tangents,
Big
relevant as
facts.
they are in some respects. I'm
Yeah,
interested. That's why I'm in this YouTube. That's why I'm here. I don't have to be here.
yeah.
I don't have to be
I'll
here. I
listen.
could be elsewhere on
Uh,
shows being interviewed about other
yeah, I'm
things,
gonna go
which
ahead.
I am.
I'm gonna go ahead and exit off because you got a lot of people that saying I shouldn't be in the space or anything like that. So I'm gonna show respect and I'm gonna go ahead and leave and exit.
Um,
Thank you for popping up. 18th letter. I appreciate you.
okay, well, first of all, excuse me. Okay. I just wanted to say that first of all, people should be allowed to identify oneself as one sees fit. Okay, and we can all disagree at times. I mean, the key is just to be agreeable when we disagree, because sometimes it is through disagreements that we can learn what is the actual truth. Because, and I know I said this before, and people are sick and tired of me saying it, is that you know everyone, there's good and bad in every community. We all should be allowed to identify ourselves as we see fit. And we should if people say they are what they are, we should just accept it and not argue with them.
Period. Facts. Exactly. I think, okay, here's what I think. Anybody who's trying to control anybody else's identity is a complete narcissist, and they don't deserve your attention. They don't deserve your respect. That you get away from them. You just ignore them. Like, you don't have any authority over my identity whatsoever. I have total authority and control over myself and my identity. And anybody trying to tell me I'm not this and I'm not this and this is who you are, you're a narcissist. Like, I can't imagine trying to go and control somebody else's how they identify themselves. Like, that's crazy to me. I can never picture myself doing anything like that. So the thing people are trying to do it to us is just insanity. And totally, completely just don't give that any
So
attention whatsoever.
that's,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I don't want you to say.
So y'all not gonna be black image mulatto school.
Yeah. So I
That's
mean,
cool. Okay, yeah.
you guys actually have some good points about self-identity, self-identification. Other people are doing that too. And I, not to get off on a tangent with the past, but everybody knows that there was one group designating everybody. So now that people are saying, no, I don't want that designation, I'm going to do this, and this is my self-designation. And the thing you guys have to do though, as biracials or mulattoes or MGMs or however you're going to identify yourself, is it has to become literally part of the national conversation to the point where everybody understands that, and then there's an official
Facts.
designation and all the other stuff. Like
Yep.
that's going to be your challenge. And once you
Mm-hmm.
get that established, then and I think we kind of had this conversation before, but then you guys you outline your ideology, the rules, and how you identify and why you identify as such, and then everybody just has to accept that. Now, the rules on who does what aren't as hard and fast as they used to be in the past. 60 plus years ago, let's just start 1965 or 1965, 1964 and earlier. Whatever, you were given the designation that you were given, and you had to deal with that. But if you guys decide to change it, then that's fine. But if it's going to take a while you're absolutely correct. It's going to take a while for people to adjust to that. I'm fine with it. If you guys want to identify a certain way, and then kind of be something other than black or people of African descent, or however it is you're going to identify, then it makes sense. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to tell you that you're going to have a lot of people giving you some level of pushback, and
Mm-hmm.
you just got to figure out how to work it into the conversation, and then come up, and as you guys are doing right now with this, coming together, and then just establishing your ideology and the parameters of self-identification, because that whole definition of blackness is actually changing to some extent. Black people
Mm.
are identifying themselves. I mean, you got terms like FBA, ADOS, freedmen, descendants of enslaved Africans. You got descendants. You got several
Exactly.
terms
It's
that
changing.
people are using. So
Mm-hmm.
even black people themselves, you call them monoracials, right? Monoracials are getting away
Mm-hmm.
from the previous designations that were handed down and just forced
Exactly.
on black people.
And guess what? Yeah, and that's beautiful. Because
So
imagine
if
if
you
we were
guys are doing
like,
that, then it's fine.
yeah, imagine if we were like, no, no, you can't say FBA. You're just black. You're just this. You're just a Negro or a colored, or try to just always try to define somebody else's how they want to choose to self-identify and come up with new terms for themselves. Imagine if we did that to other people. That would be insane, right? Like that's all we want is like, hey, this is the term I want to go by, and let's have it. Like, I feels good, Kevin, to actually be like,
If you
hey,
had to
this
put
is the
a
term. I
time limit, if
respect
you had
it,
to put a
and
time
I
estimate
appreciate
on
it.
it,
I
yeah,
appreciate
what
it
would you
because
think? I would
ooh,
estimate
time
somewhere between
limit.
the next 20 to 30 years, it should actually be
Mm-hmm.
part of the national conversation. And
Absolutely.
it shouldn't be like this point of contention. Now, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have people who still see you're going to have, and I've heard this before. You're going to have people who are biracial who identify as black. I was on a I don't know if you want me to say his name, but I had a discussion with somebody a little bit earlier, and he was kind of talking stuff that was kind of interesting. I do have a question for the gentleman who said, okay, so biracials have established their own history, and
Oh,
and
that's
and
Al.
so at what point would you consider the start of, if you had to do that, what would you consider the start of biracial history, and then the designation, and where it goes from you guys being concluded with black people as part of black culture, and then you have your own designation. What would you be
Well,
if you're talking about
when you
history?
go back, in the history of the United States, let's just look
Hmm.
at the United States. You go back to the fact that by the 19th century, there have been biracial people, mixed race people in this country since I think before the formation of the U.S. But um, when you look at it from a sort of structural and cohesive collective point of view,
Hmm.
definitely in the 19th century, you had that. You had that in the 19th century because you had mulatto as a designation. The fact that mulatto was a designation on the census means that mixed race people were seen as in some way different. They
Yeah,
were not seen
absolutely.
as black people because you don't, otherwise, they would have been amalgamated within the black community, which came later. That came with Plessy v. Ferguson in the late 19th century. That came with, and eventually by 1930, the mulatto designation was gone from the census, which meant
Okay, yeah.
that they were basically, I don't know if integrated is the term, but amalgamated within African American communities. But what happened within those communities was you had the formation of groups like the Blue Vein Society.
Yeah.
And part of what the Blue Vein Society was about was the continuation and preservation, really, of mixed race people. I would say within African American communities. That's, I believe, primarily why Blue Vein existed, although it may
Mm-hmm.
not have been openly stated as such, because there was a way to continue to delineate. They couldn't do it as legally as they could in the past. They couldn't do it as independently as they could in the past, but they were able to, in their own ways, get together. I mean, if you
Yeah.
look at the HBCUs, I call them historically biracial colleges and universities because you had to be basically some degree of mixed race lineage to go to those schools initially because they required a picture that you had to send with your application.
Okay.
Most colleges and universities did not require pictures. That was to see what you look like. So we have part of what I say if I go on, live streams like this or others, is I say we've been around. We're not a new phenomenon. We aren't a brand new thing. We aren't something that just emerged like Aphrodite. We've been around in this country for quite a while, but our status and our legacy to a great extent and our who we are legally and historically in many respects has been ripped from us. It's been taken from us. And
Facts.
it became that way because of segregation to a great extent.
Yep.
Segregation,
Hmm.
the formations of formal segregation in this country helped necessitate the destruction of black, white, biracial people's um, identity and their as an entity, as a legal and social entity in this country. I mean, and so we've been rendered invisible, and we're really invisible people fighting to be visible. That's part of what we are now. It's funny in many respects we're visible and yet we're invisible. It's a kind of contradiction.
What would be the
To
goal
cite
going
a
forward in trying to get biracial and mulatto, or what would you guys prefer, biracial or mulatto?
I
Oh, it's
prefer
hard.
biracial myself. I can't speak for
Oh,
anyone else.
it's hard.
Okay.
It's kind. I kind of
So,
use those two interchangeably.
okay.
So
Mulatto
All
is
right.
oof,
fine though because it refers to something much more
either
specific,
one.
whereas
Okay.
biracial is
Either
kind of
one.
more of like an umbrella term. But either or works
What
because
would be the
that's
Okay,
goal
I
to try
might.
to get that on the census and as an
Well,
official
either or
designation
it
in
doesn't
the
really
future?
work if you're trying to get something done because
I
if we have
know it's
specific
so that's tough.
needs, like
Our
a
community's
biracial white and
split.
Asian doesn't have the yeah, they don't have the same need
It's a
that we
split in
like
our community,
psychological
honestly.
things
We'll
that we
say
have.
mulatto. Okay, on my channel, we'll just say mulatto for now.
Okay,
We're
because
trying to we're
mulatto
trying to
means
normalize
it's
that more.
basically mixed,
Yeah,
and
we're
that
trying
could
to
be anything,
normalize.
right? Well,
That's true
Well,
but
too.
you got
But
the
people, it
issues.
means black and
biracial,
Yeah,
white.
we have different historical issues. Yeah, I
biracial can be anything too. Biracial is just a combination of two different mixtures, whatever they are. And the other thing too is, so what would be the ideal goal to actually get that designation? To see that as like an official designation. There's no confusion. Everybody has it. White
What we're
people
gonna
got
need,
it.
we've
Black people
started
got
so
it.
many petitions, so many
Okay.
petitions, but I feel like we really need to start amplifying our voices. And I really would appreciate if our allies like start like helping to like raise, because it's so swept under the rug type of thing. It's like it's not really like it's like a need, but we do have our own needs that we do need to start, you know, bringing more awareness too. Because as of right now, so many petitions have been started. I feel like they go nowhere because our community is still so small. In other communities that have more power than us, they're not really caring or paying attention to like what's going on in our little
I'm
tiny
not gonna
baby
lie,
Well,
community.
Magic. I
it's
think
like
we should.
everything else. It starts at
What'd you
the
say?
grassroots level, and then it goes into
No, I
politics,
was
and
gonna
that,
say something a little bit
that's kind of how
controversial,
everything
but I
starts.
think
No, go
we might
ahead.
be better off trying to appeal to maybe some Latino Hispanic
The
politicians as far as the name.
Latino. That's why. Yeah,
And
for
the
real.
reason
They,
why is
they
because they're already familiar with the term mulatto, so they probably would understand us a lot more
exactly.
than like a black politician, because they'll probably be like, nah,
Yeah.
we're not doing that. That's offensive. But Hispanic Latino culture, they already use that term in their country, so they're going to be more familiar and be like,
True.
okay, that makes sense. So we might have to
Well,
go that route.
why would you
well,
think that they would think that's offensive
that's a
though?
strategy. It's a strategy.
That is a strategy.
I will
That
admit.
is.
Why would that be offensive? It's just another designation. It just has
Oh
But
that.
it's
wait, no,
offensive
no.
to a
Who
lot
said it
of
was
black people. We know
a
that.
lot of
Oh
people?
yeah,
No,
yeah.
You go
it's
to a black
offensive. Like
politician or
how mulatto, Mrs.
Right.
Mulatto, she had to change her name because people found it offensive, even though she was empowering other like mulatto women to feel like comfortable in their identity. But to other people, it was more important that, oh, the word is too offensive to me, and they made her change her
Yeah.
name.
Well,
So
I
it's
admit
a
I'm one of
lot.
those people that didn't
I
like
know
the
you don't
name.
like mulatto. I know,
I
and we're
admit I'm one of those
split.
people.
There's a lot of people in our community that are like mulatto.
Yeah.
They don't like
So
the
you
word
guys have to
either.
agree on the
It's
designation
hard.
first.
Yeah, that's our struggle. We
Okay,
have
so
to
you
agree
guys
on
got to get
first.
to a point of
Exactly.
agreement on that first before it even
Exactly. I
before
agree
you
with
can
that.
even. I'm not going to say before, but I mean it needs to be
Because
part of the conversation. And
biracial,
then,
I've heard a lot of good arguments for biracial because it's like, oh, it's more politically correct, and they're like, oh, mulatto, that identity already got defeated before. But I do like it, like connects us to our culture. But I do like biracial because biracial is more like it's more like PC, I
well,
guess,
okay, so biracial is
So
different from mulatto, and how biracial would be different from how people think of mulatto in the past, because mulatto was kind of used in a. It depends on which side of this you were on. It had either a negative or a positive connotation depending on how it was used. So
I
people are
mean,
going to
to me,
still associate.
biracial is kind of like saying Latino, Hispanic. You don't know who you're talking about. Are we talking about Puerto Ricans, Mexicans? We all like they have different issues. Cubans have different
But you could
issues.
then okay,
So
then now you get down to the weeds on that. Okay, so biracial Latino, and then
biracial black and white.
it needs to get to
So
the point where
that's
where
why
you're
do all
doing
At
that
that.
and
least,
just be
yeah,
like,
at
so
least,
like
I
how
think on
about
the
I have an idea like Magic. How about we all like compromise? So like those who aren't particularly like comfortable with the term, how about we all compromise? It's like get like the term up there on the census anyway, but also include biracial up there. So then that way,
yes,
like on forms and everything, they can
yeah,
just put
exactly.
biracial and
I
not the
agree with
M.
that.
That's
Let's do
actually how
that.
you have to
I just
compromise in a
want,
country which is becoming
yep.
more and more of a cesspool for so much diversity in thoughts and beliefs and philosophies, because that's essentially what the American essence is about.
Okay, so now
I agree.
let me ask you guys
Let's do
this,
that.
Mulatto. So because like I said, I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, and he kind of made a point about it. So I didn't know if I was going to come up, but since I am, I'm going to head. I'm relaying the question basically that we discussed about through me from him. And the question was, if you guys are going to be biracial and be a separate group, then are you moving away from black culture
I want to take the
and
best of
start
black
sending your own?
culture and preserve the best because there's so many
Right.
wonderful, amazing aspects of black culture. But I think there's a lot of aspects of black culture that I feel like I don't want to really be a part of. But I love like soul music and gospel and like there's so like, I love soul food. I
Yeah,
love
but
black
Magic,
people. I
let's
love
be honest.
That's still
so
being
much.
attached.
But
So
The farther
does
we
that
move
make
away
sense?
from it,
but his argument is that if you do that, now you're still attached to black culture.
no, but
But
Kevin,
we
You're
look, I
you're
think
we're
using biracial
connected. We're
designation, but you're
obviously
still attached to black
we
culture.
there's still going to be a connection there, but just
Mhm.
because we could still have a connection and have, like you said, we talked about this, Kevin, how we're going to have like I wanted to have that last stream I did about us having maintaining like a positive relationship with each other because
Okay,
we
yeah,
come
yeah.
from. So that's what I really want. That's my goal. I really want us to have our own. It's like we're still neighbors in the same neighborhood, basically. Like I have my own house, my own ways, my own shit. And then you guys have your own house, your own ways, but we're still in the same neighborhood, basically. We're still cool. Like we still see, like like that's how I kind of want it. Like we just want to have our own, where we can have
So
a
biracial
express
designation, but
ourselves
still attached
culturally.
to black culture.
I feel
Is
like
that what
okay,
you're talking
somebody
about?
says no, but I feel like we are connected. Of course, we come from, but it means we're come from black and white, so we're gonna
Yeah.
always have that connection
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
But
I
I
think
still
that's
and I'm
the
not trying to start
I
anything.
think
The only
your
reason I'm asking
question.
is that that's the argument he presented. He said, "Look, if
Right.
you say you're gonna, if you say you're biracial, and then you say I'm moving away from black culture and I'm gonna be my own culture, then that means you have to move away from the culture completely. You have to establish
I
something
don't
new and
think you had
different."
to. Hold on, where'd Anthony go?
I'm just telling you
Oh,
that's his argument.
I
So,
don't think we had
and
to
again,
get
that's
away from the.
Yeah,
That
like
doesn't
Kevin,
even
I
make
know who you're
sense.
talking about because you saw me earlier on his panel
yeah,
too. You saw
yeah.
the
So
whole
yeah,
exchange
Giorgio was there.
between us.
And maybe Giorgio can explain that a little bit better than I can. I mean, look, I'm
Basically, yeah.
the monoracial black
Basically,
guy
the
up here.
person
Yeah, go
person we're
ahead.
talking about in question Magic basically says we might as well start up from the ground up, which is ultimately what we want. But it's
Right.
not like we're trying to secede 100% from blackness or even whiteness, because technically speaking,
No, we're gonna.
Anglo whiteness already has so much influence in this country. There's no way that we can possibly escape from it, though. And if we were to do that 100%
Same
from
with
Anglo
black
culture, we might
culture.
as
That
well
doesn't even
stop
make
speaking
sense.
English.
We can't.
I can only
But
speak for myself. on the subject, like in regards to culture, because I think the point that was brought up is relevant to the topic of the live stream. And I can only speak for myself when I say I'm not really attached. Yes, I am a black, white, biracial person, but I'm not really attached to, I guess you would call it FBA culture. That's the designation. I'm not into a lot of the same things that would make up this culture. Jazz would probably be one of the few things I would say. Um, I I'll be brutally honest. I'm somebody who is into classical music, into this minor extent opera, is into literature that would be American and European. Well, I'm a writer, and films as well, in terms of that artistic aspect of it. Um, yeah, I wouldn't be into many of the, as I guess to use the term that we're using now, FBA culture.
Hey, can I
So,
respond to that when he's done?
you know, yeah, so that I can only speak for myself when I say no, I'm not really attached to it. I certainly am no fan of rap music. I'll just be honest. And this, what do they call it? Drill? I know nothing
Yeah, so
about.
people, yeah, I can understand that. But now, I understand with rap music, you got a lot of people aren't identifying with drill right now because it has a negative connotation. I find, just real quick that conversation as relates to music, especially rap music. When something first comes out or pops off, it's like, okay, that's negative. I don't want to be associated with it. And then 15, 20 years later, then it becomes like, okay, now that there's this classical, there's this historical and classic and significance attached to it. It's the same thing they did with gangster rap. It's just a matter of fact, it's the same thing that happened with rap when it first started, right from the rip in the early 19,
Yo, Kevin,
60s.
can I answer the question that you asked earlier? 'Cause
Mm-hmm, go
my
ahead.
thing got cut off. No, but you were talking about, are we gonna separate from Black American culture?
Yeah,
Was
that's a
that
good
was your
question.
question? You know, I was thinking it was funny because they say that, but naturally we would separate because the more you move away from having like a full quote unquote black parent, you're gonna separate from the culture. Like me, I don't cook any type of soul food. Like I would have to go out there and actually look for Black American music to actually listen
I
to. Like
cook
I
soul
don't,
food. I love
yeah, I
soul
don't.
food.
Where'd you learn how to
Yes.
cook it?
And the South, I lived in Atlanta for 10 years.
Okay,
So,
but this okay, like
yeah.
well, oh, that's cool, that's good. But I feel like a lot of us are not gonna do it. Like my sister, she don't cook no, she don't
No,
cook no
I'm keeping
soul
soul
food. It's
food.
like
No, we're keeping that.
Yeah, don't look at
after like a
me.
couple
Yeah, I
generations,
never
you think
would.
that's gonna
I
still
I'm
never.
keep?
keeping soul food. Yes,
Well,
we
see,
keep it
I
soul
don't
there's
mind the
nothing.
food.
black. I don't mind the black eyed peas, but no.
I don't see
That's
anything
about
wrong
it.
with interacting and actually appreciating somebody else's culture because we do that all the time. It's just there's a line where okay, this is white culture, this is Asian culture, this is Latino culture, this is black culture. There's certain parts of Asian culture that I appreciate. I'm not Asian. I mean, there's certain things I like about it. And I love martial arts. I don't really do it, but I can appreciate the movement behind it, the form, the dedication, the discipline, and the beauty of it. But I'm not Asian. I mean, that's their thing. I mean, when you start to, and that's how we get the mixed martial arts because that's how everybody started mixing it all together. So that becomes the designation. It's mixed. It's martial arts, but we know the origin of that art form. It comes generally from Asians. Black people didn't start martial arts. Well, they had some form of it or some form of fighting, but I mean, it wasn't designated as martial arts. When we think about it, we think about Asians, right? We don't think about Latinos when it comes to martial arts, even though in Brazil they have what capoeira, right?
My thing is
But capoeira,
the farther away you get from the culture, even if you try to keep it, it's gonna change. Like that's what I'm trying to
yeah,
say. Like it's not gonna hit the same as like a woman in the South is gonna cook soul food. It's
okay,
just
yeah, yeah,
not.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you try to pass it to your kids, it's not gonna be the same. So, but that's
Right.
natural, and I feel like naturally it's gonna start to
Yes.
develop into its own type
Its
of
own
culture.
culture, kind of separate and
Yeah,
away from Black culture, but
Right.
still connected somehow,
Right.
yeah,
or at
yeah,
least
yeah.
some level of appreciation. Because that
Exactly.
because you
Yeah.
mentioned it
Probably.
earlier, and that
Probably.
was his argument, and he was being very aggressive about how he was talking about it and speaking on this, but
Hmm.
uh, because his argument is that, and again, I'm speaking based on the conversation we had earlier, is that if you're still connected to Black culture, then you haven't really you got a new designation, but you haven't moved away from Black culture, which still
Yeah,
makes you
because
part of Black
it takes time. It takes time. That's the thing. It's not going to be like tomorrow we're going to wake up and everyone's going to say, you know, I'm mulatto now. No, this is decades. Like the way I look at it is this is decades in the making. Like it's gonna be a while, but it's eventually, I think it's gonna eventually
Exactly.
happen naturally. And if we don't get a jump on it, we could end up having a mixed population who could hate black people. You know what I mean? And I feel like we should get like a jump on it so we can, educate our children. You know what I mean? And not have this situation in 20, 30 years where they're just like, there is like another class and they're like, look, we don't want nothing to do with these black people. You know what I mean? Like, I feel
We
like
don't
that's
want that.
eventually gonna
We
happen.
don't want that. We want to have a good relationship with black people. We come from black people, you know. We want to have that positive relationship where we have our own identity. That's a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship when you can have your own, you can have yourself, and you can have somebody else too. We respect your
Right.
identity, we respect your
Well,
culture, we
in
respect your community,
essence,
and we're respected as well as back. That's a healthy relationship right
right.
there. We're two
I
mutual
think
respect
what
for
I'm
each other.
hearing from I think what I'm hearing from both of you, and I never thought about this in all this time, but is seeing biracial people, black, white biracial people specifically, as a sort of nation, not specifically as a nation state, but as a sort of nation. Because of its, well, we will be different, but we could have good relations. It's like countries that have treaties and countries that have trade deals and countries that have all kinds of diplomacy and ambassadors and so forth. It's seeing biracial people really as kind of a nation, which is something I never thought of before. It's interesting, but so it's really distinction and separation, but not disconnection. So in other words, black, white, biracial people won't be disconnected totally from African Americans for
Exactly.
obvious reasons, but they will be separate and distinct. So I
Exactly.
think
And that's
that's the
fine.
reality.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
point from earlier, though, is that
Yeah,
we're not
you guys
really
have a
going
real
to
challenge.
depart ourselves 100% from anybody, but we're also still going to actually have like distinct and unique aspects of our own too.
Okay, well, yeah,
It's sort of like being
you guys have a real
Singapore in
challenge as it
relation
relates
to
to all of this stuff
Malaysia.
that you're trying to do. So, I
It's
mean,
a
it's an
challenge.
interesting conversation.
The way I also look at it too, Evan, is that yeah, it's very challenging, but what comes with a good challenge comes with a good opportunity in disguise. Is also how I look at it.
And our
Yeah.
grandchildren will probably thank us for it, in the future. Because right now, who has ever fought on behalf of mixed mulatto people? Like nobody is really doing that. Like we're
Nobody.
pretty much like the trailblazers in the 21st century when it comes to fighting for, the needs of mulatto people. Because like I said earlier, like we got like kids that might have these psychological issues that come from two cultures that essentially don't really like each other, and then they're stuck in the middle, and no one's trying to
It's
evaluate
so
these kids and
hard.
say, let's check these kids out so they don't grow up and go crazy and shit. Like
Okay,
we gotta
so
address that.
the only thing I would say is as far and so the issue is between black and white culture, and I always frame it in terms of the problem is not coming from black culture. We never really had the issue. We never really had the power or the influence in order to create issues and problems as it relates to both cultures. That only comes from the white folks. That comes from their side. So, and I kind of put it in the chat. Let me go ahead and pull it up because I kind of
Well, see,
yeah.
that's again.
I said so. The race
Let me
construct in
just
the
let
USA
me.
stops when white people stop it. That
Well,
has
again,
nothing to do with black people. Do we have these
I
issues not
have to, I
because of
have
black
to,
people, because of them?
I have to chime in here.
Mhm.
The problem is, I hear this argument always being used, and the problem is that there are issues on both sides of the fence. So responsibility has to be taken on both sides of the fence. It's very convenient to say all the problems are the result of one group of people, and that's it. It's very
Mm.
easy to assess the problems of the one drop rule and the one aspect. But the problem as it relates to biracial people, if we're going to bring up one drop and stuff like that, is the continuance of that rule within the social order and matrix and structure of a community. And that lies within the responsibility of African Americans. They're continuing that, they're hanging on to it. So they have a responsibility in regards to that. So I always view things from this perspective. I see a plague on both houses. I look at responsibility in a dual way. I don't exempt one group from responsibility. I really, one group has a different form of responsibility than the other.
Okay, Roger, that's a
One
good point. Now I
group
would ask you
has,
this: which group is probably going to give you the most
yeah.
resistance on moving that needle? That would be my next
Well,
question.
see, the well again, you have to look at what group has the most to gain and what group has the most to lose. The reason why there's resistance between some sectors of the African American community, and I say some sectors, not all, because I've talked to African Americans who are perfectly fine with biracial people and understand biracial people are different and not that. Some sectors have an issue, and there's pushback because there are deemed to be a necessity to keep mixed race people within the fold of Black communities.
It would be
They
black
they
The
deem to
people.
be
reasons
what?
that
Black people would give the most pushback.
Why?
right
Why do you think?
because
Because I
right
think we're living in a time now where there's a
because
lot of like, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, well, because in some quarters of those communities, biracial people are deemed to be a part of those communities, even if they aren't really fully acknowledged. It's the catch 22,
Yeah.
but it's still a feeling of necessity. Like they don't want mixed race people to go their own way because it either will reflect poorly they feel on their community or on them, or they will lose something. It's seen as a loss. Like they will lose, I don't know, talent maybe, or they will lose individuals. So I think it's a kind of, it's a dual way. It's a kind of uh, a literal sort of cultural aspect. I think it's a cultural aspect, but I think it's also a racial, but it's, I think, also a literal aspect where they will lose people. And so it's this feeling that if biracial people do their own thing, black, white, biracial people do their own thing, they're moving away from black people or they're moving away from blackness.
We get
And
And
told
the
that we're
reality is, how can
dividing
you
the
move
black
away from
community.
something that you aren't entirely?
But yeah, we get told,
Go
oh,
ahead,
you
sorry.
guys are trying to divide the black community. You're trying to separate. But that's what we get when we try to claim our identity. That's the pushback we get most of the time. You're dividing us. You're trying to separate. Like I hate that. Like I'm just like, no, we're not trying to divide the black community. It's like you're trying to take away numbers from
Well,
us, and
it's
you're
already
dividing us. That's what
divided,
we get.
and you
That's
couldn't,
what we get told.
by separating, yeah, but by separating, how can you divide a community if you separate them? That's not division. That's separation. That's bifurcation. That's not division. They aren't dividing themselves by saying that what they are. They're saying we are separate and different and distinct. They aren't saying
Mm.
we're a just another version of you. That means you could stay in that community and do that. But that's what you got now. What you have in some quarters is you have people who are biracial, and there's this thinking of what is this black comes in all colors kind of mentality that you see within African American communities, which when I first heard about it confused the hell out of me. I'm like, wait, how is that possible? That doesn't make any sense. But
Okay.
I didn't really know.
Hold on, let Ant
Go ahead.
say. What were you gonna say, Anthony? I wanted to hear your opinion too.
I don't even remember the damn point. I was gonna say, okay, oh yeah, the pushback on black people. Okay, so yeah, it would definitely be coming from black people, because I think we're living in a time now where the country is, like a lot of people like especially like white liberals, they're all about expressing yourself in different groups and identities. So I don't really see them giving any pushback, especially if they hear our point of view. But I do see a lot of black people, because you're gonna see, just like the guy you were talking about, it's kind of like you belong to us, this type of mentality where it's like forget your other side, right? Like you belong to us. You know what I mean? That type of mentality that a lot of black people have, because they've always seen mixed people as black from the one drop rule.
Okay,
So
but if you
that's why I
guys
think.
make that clear and that's a new designation, that one drop again, shifting definitions of who is black and who is not and who's biracial. It's clear if you're mixed, then you're biracial. That being said, that would be a new shifting
Do
definition
you know
of
that?
black
Do
people.
you
What do
know
you
that
think it
same
is?
individual you were talking with said that all black Americans are technically mulattoes? So
Well,
now we're
that
doing this whole, we're moving the goalposts now. Like, well, now I'm mulatto too. You know what I mean?
well,
So
not,
you should
okay.
have asked
So
them
Well,
about
see,
that.
that's the problem. That's
phenotypically
where I
though,
said the whole black comes in all
phenotypically, how would you
shades thing.
present? You know where he gets that from, right? You know where that comes from. That comes from everybody mixing or being mixed during enslavement, and then the genes being passed
Like the
down.
15%. Yeah.
Yeah,
I got a question
like
for you
every
guys.
black person. You
I
guys,
got a
you look at my avatar. You see how dark I am, but I mean, obviously, we have somewhere between 15. Every black person in
But you
America
know they're
has
counting in. Somebody made a good point
15%
about
of
the 15,
DNA,
20%. You know
and I
they're
wouldn't call
counting
myself
in
white. I
biracial
wouldn't call
people.
myself mixed.
But the thing about that is they're counting in biracial people because biracial people are considered black, so they're counting them in within those whole percentages. So it's not like because we don't have our own category, our own group. You can't just be like, oh, you're biracial, and so they're counting us in
I'd
with
be
that.
interested
So
in
that's
knowing the
kind of
number in the next.
skewing the numbers. I think it is a little bit. But I got a question for you guys. Do you feel like us as biracial, black, white, American mulattoes, is it our responsibility to make sure the one drop rule is dead? Like we are the ones that are going to have to like step forward and stop letting people enforce the one drop rule on us. Do you feel like that's our responsibility? I feel like that kind of is. It's kind of.
I think
What y'all
it's
Yes,
think?
both. I
yes,
think it's
because
both.
like Magic, that we're gonna also have to be the ones to play the central role in truly like overriding it though, because like what I was trying to say earlier though, before I guess 18th letter left, is that like the one drop rule, it was rooted in the arbitrary designation set out by Anglo supremacists. So are we going to let Anglo supremacists from 230, 300 years
Hell
ago
no.
dictate and police our identity? And then let alone is that we already know that the one drop rule is still is socially in effect. So are we going to actually let like people who have the mentality of Anglo elites from the time dictate and police our identity? As
Huh?
far as I know, hell to the
Hell
no.
no. Hell to the no.
Because that's
No,
precisely what
no,
people are doing
no,
now. And you
nope,
even have like
nope.
people who look like me and you who are
I'll be
also
damned.
getting on board with that one dropping bandwagon. And I'm just like, well, that is your right because it's, I guess you can say it's your freedom of expression or speech. But what I see is another person who's just being racially masochistic. Because if they really want to get down to history, if they really want to go down that far, I can just say is that, well, you're taking on the sins of Anglo elites from the time. That's your right, but that is just not going to be a
We are
bandwagon that I'm
not
going to
letting
go on
no
board.
old, dead,
Okay, so
white
you guys
So if
discussed
people want
supremacist
to,
pushback.
100 years ago
go
dictate
on.
our identity, period. Oh, go ahead, Kevin. Sorry.
You guys discussed pushback that you would get from black people, and I suspect it's based on the numbers. And you have black people who might feel like they're losing something, but I don't really see it that way. That being said, what would be the push? What would be your predicted pushback from white people? What would you think they? What resistance do you think you get from
Okay,
them?
since they are the main ones that, with the laws and stuff, we're going to have to come up with our main thing. Like you said, we have to come up with a term that white people are comfortable with, basically, so they could get it on the census and make sure. But that's why I think that we should go with like biracial black and white for now until we can maybe we get mulatto down the line. But just for like biracial black white, I think that's something that I don't think white people are comfortable with mulatto for some reason. I don't care. I don't care
To
at the
be
Honestly, we
same
need to
time.
stop worrying about
to be
white people.
honest,
I don't
though, there's a
care.
part
No,
of
but we
us
have to get
we
it on the
honestly
census. Like
shouldn't really give a rat's ass as to what they
we
think.
shouldn't
Like
care.
Magic,
I
because
Exactly.
long
Yeah.
story
agree.
short is that look at it this way: most human beings are selfish. We are
Yes.
selfish creatures, and
Yeah.
our selfishness is just going to get us in tune with our feelings. But
Mhm.
do facts care about feelings? As far as I know, absolutely not. So are we going to let our selfish desires just like cloud our judgment and shield us from facts? You actually have to walk in pain. You actually have to
I
walk
agree with you.
in discomfort in order to fucking grow. Pardon my mouth.
No, you're not
But
wrong. You're
No,
I
that's a
don't
completely right.
care
fact.
about
Okay,
what
that was.
selfish white people or selfish mulattoes or selfish black people have to say.
I agree. Our pushback.
Get uncomfortable in order for you to grow and progress. That's what
Our
I've had to
pushback.
do. That's why I
Uh,
let go of a lot of toxic shit in my life.
Facts.
So
I,
become comfortable with the uncomfortable.
No,
I
here's our
generally don't
pushback.
address people in the chat. I
Hold on.
just kind of ignore it. But I'm gonna
No,
go ahead and say this.
Kevin, don't worry about that. Let me just say this real quick.
Uh,
So our pushback is more socially from black people, and then when it comes to our legislation and trying to get things on the census and trying to get things in law, I feel like that's going to be our pushback from white people because they're going to feel
okay,
like,
yes,
why
there
do
you
you
go.
need this?
Mhm.
They're going
Yes,
to feel
but
like
white
it's not
people are going to
important.
be irrelevant. Yeah,
And there
white
you
people are
go.
going
But
to
see,
be
now once it
irrelevant.
becomes law, now it doesn't matter anymore. Who gives you pushback?
Yeah,
It's
they're
a
going to be
law.
the minority in like 20 years. So I mean,
Ooh,
I don't think we
true,
need to be worried about white people.
true,
That's why I
facts.
said we should try to get our numbers up and probably try to appeal to maybe some Latino Hispanics and be like, oh
All
look,
right.
man, I want to get this on the census, and they might rock with it.
Okay, you can go ahead and address the comment. Are you addressing this comment? It's white. It's mixed versus black from now on.
That
Well,
guy doesn't
damn.
even
We
have
at
a face,
war.
so we shouldn't even
Mixed
address
versus
that.
black. What? No, no.
Sorry, no. What comment were
No,
you trying to address, Kevin?
it's just another category and designation. That's it. It's nothing to be
I
Now
you
we're
mean,
know
at
we
make
could
war.
do
This is the
all
this is
biracial.
worked up
this is what
about.
people think though. We have
I'm
our
just
own
trying to listen to
identity.
what you
We're gonna
guys
be
and
at
then
war.
just and not necessarily being devil's advocate, but just trying to understand Okay,
No, I
so
appreciate
as
that.
you're changing
You're good.
something, there's resistance from black people. There's resistance from white folks. I always and you know and maybe I'm biased here. You know, on the you know the monoracial black guy on the panel. I
Hmm.
always see most of the pushback and everything that black people do or anybody who's non-black does come from white folks because they're the ones that decide because you know the country is set up so that way they own, control, direct, and create everything and put it in their favor. And if, let me put it to you this way: if it works in their favor, they're all on board. But if it doesn't, then you ain't gonna get it. That's just how it is. And if
Exactly.
you do get it, you're gonna have to fight like hell
A
in order
lot
to
of
get it.
these
Because that's how
white
black people.
people
Because that's how black
got
people feel.
biracial kids. I know, like the one in Ohio. Remember, I posted a video of him talking about. He was like saying, "Oh, I can't be racist because I got biracial kids." And he ended up getting elected as like into Congress to represent for Ohio or something like that. So a lot of these politicians and people in power, a lot of them have biracial. Remember they were saying about Bill Clinton, he has that like one like biracial kid like hidden away somewhere. Like, you
Yeah,
remember that? A lot of them have
but
like
you can have biracial
His
kids and
name is
still be racist.
Danny Lee
Billy, yeah, they
Williams.
were saying like even
He
even
looks like
even the
him too.
old school presidents like Thomas, a lot of them have like, but that's the thing about that's the difference though is that like historically they never really wanted to claim us or have us have any like or pass down any power or anything to us. Like we were kind of just like totally left out of like the wills and all.
Right.
We didn't want
Well,
to,
yeah, that's
but now
yeah,
so
it's the
that's why
American way of looking at mixed race people, which
mhm,
is you get nothing.
get nothing. Yeah.
You know, if this
So
were
it's
like
kind of
let's
like
make a deal, you get the goat behind door number 3 instead of the car behind door number 1.
I don't know how to deal with that honestly. I don't know
That's
how
the deal
to we're
that
gonna
biracial
navigate
people
that.
got in the US.
Yeah, it's totally new. It's totally new territory. I don't know how we're gonna have to find a way to navigate that and make sure that we're pushing for what we need. And
That's
people
just
are
been my
gonna.
observation when it comes to white folks. If it benefits them, they have no problem approving it. But if they think they're going to lose something, they'll be like, nah. Not only am I going to
But
give you
I when I
pushback,
did that
I'm gonna
stream with
stop it in their, I'm
nobody
gonna stop
Jen,
it in their
That's not
track.
true. If we put money behind a politician, they're gonna take that
money,
money.
it's all about money.
Yeah, I mean you're right. I'm just saying they got to figure out a way to make it benefit them if they're
But
white.
listen,
That's just what I see from white people. That's just been the history. That's just what I see. That's what they
Yeah,
do.
but they're gonna be
And
the
that's
minority
and they're
again.
very clear about that. The only way black people got changed about for anything is the fact that they had to fight like hell to get it, or tear the damn
Kevin,
country
Kevin, let me
apart,
ask you something. Where
or,
do you live?
or
Like,
damn
what
near go to
state?
war. Uh huh.
What state do you live in?
What's that?
here
What
in Latin
state
And
do
I'm
you
not.
live in?
America,
Yeah, and I'm not giving them power or anything. It's just that's how they. That's how the country is set
I think
up.
he's in Honduras or something. You say
I'm
in
sorry. Say it
Honduras,
again.
right?
What would you say?
You
What was the
stay at
question?
where you live at? No, you say you stay at Honduras, right?
Yeah, I'm in Honduras, but I go back and forth to the United
Honduras.
States on a regular. So that's why I
What
try to
part of the
stay.
United States you from?
I'm from Florida. I grew up in Florida.
Florida. Okay, that's
Yeah, I
cool.
grew up in Florida,
Okay.
but when I was in the military, I was in North Carolina for almost about a decade and a half, and
I
then
asked
I
you that
legally
because I
retired out
lived
of
in South
Florida.
Florida, and I'm telling you, white people besides the governor are pretty much irrelevant when it comes to politics. Like Latino
Mm.
Hispanics pretty much got that on lock, and then in Broward County, most of the cities are pretty much run by black politicians. So when you say white people, it's not really white people. We have to talk to the this at the local level to our politicians and getting
Yeah,
things
at the
done. Like
local level.
if
Mm.
Yeah. So look,
True.
man, I don't want to make this too political,
if
but
people can get they and
those black
him and
politicians have
it,
zero power. They don't do anything. They're completely
It's a genuine
ineffective.
question. What do you have to
They're
think a
just
lot of
there holding the
people
space
mindset?
and saying, "Look,
Mm.
I'm a black mayor." That's about it. They don't get anything done.
here we go.
And
That's
and,
that
and
pro black stuff, man. That we
I've
can't
gone to
do
cities like Jackson,
anything and
Mississippi, that where they don't even have running water. That's a black led city, and that place is a damn mess. And I'm not.
Okay,
that's because of corruption. That's their fault.
Yeah,
They
but
set
that's
things
misuse
up to
of
so
be
power.
corrupt.
They have the power. They have it's just a misuse of power. That's the problem. But let me tell y'all. Let me get my
mhm.
little point across real quick about what you were talking about our pushback from white people. So I did that stream with Nobody Jane, and she said something interesting to me that I kind of opened my eyes a little bit. How it was like, oh, we thought that she said that we thought that making biracial kids it would bring white and black people together, but all of a sudden it's like we just have this whole other group that hates us, right? And it kind of like made me realize nobody this is the pushback we're going to get from both sides is they don't want to have another group to compete with, basically. That's what it boils down to. We don't want to have a whole other group that's going to try to be competing for resources and all this stuff. Like that's going to be the
Right.
main pushback because it's a
Well,
competition
that's
thing.
the
So
economic and political side of it. So you're right. From the
Yeah.
economic
So that's
political
going to be the
side, you're
pushback from both
absolutely
sides.
correct.
Both sides don't want another group to compete with. Like they don't want that at all. But I
Well,
want
too late. Too
to. It's
late. You
too
got
late.
one.
It's too late. But yeah,
I don't
I
think
have
that.
a
I think maybe
genuine
50 years ago,
Hey, we
maybe,
already
but
got there's
not
already like
today.
5, 6, 7 groups. So if one more group ain't really
so
gonna make
many
that much
group.
for it.
Right. Period. Thank you. That
Now,
I
if there were 3 more groups trying to come on board, that's different. Now, then you probably have a problem. But if
we're
it's just one more
overdue.
group,
Like we already had an identity, and then we got it taken away. So we're just trying to take back what's already ours. So,
okay,
but yeah,
all
I
right.
want to do you guys let's answer Biracial Becky's question. I have a genuine question. What do y'all think that the mulatto people here tonight have a different mindset than ADOS FBF on this live? Do you guys think we have a different mindset? What do y'all think about that?
I don't. That's
Well,
why I don't like the biracial term, because I feel like if we use that and put it on the census, we're gonna have the same problem that ADOS and FBA had, that they had to deal with for the last, decades, where they're pretty much lumped into every single group, but every single group doesn't represent the Black American
POCs.
experience. So we're gonna have that problem in the future. Like, okay, who's getting the set asides? Who's getting like the set asides
But
from the
that's why
federal
we needed,
government to
like, on the
deal.
UK. In the UK, you could pick biracial, then you could say black, white, or Asian and black, or this and that. Like you could
that's true. Their
determine
forms are very
exactly what
exact.
biracial. So I think that's like in the UK they already
Right.
have
Their
that. So I
forms
Yeah,
are
think
but do
that's
you
very
want to be
something.
exact.
noticed? But do you want to be
Their
known as
forms
this
are very
black and
exact.
white for the rest of existence? Like, are we just gonna always say,
No,
"I'm black
I
and white"?
like
My
that.
kids, "Oh, I'm black and white," and it's just like, why not just
No,
be
I
one
like
whole
that's why I like
person?
mulatto. That's why I do want to fight to like help reclaim mulatto. I definitely am totally with that because I really do feel like that's part of our history and culture that I do want to preserve and keep. So, I you're right. I hate going just saying I'm white and black. It feels so empty, honestly. But yeah, yeah, yep, yep. So let me stop giving white people so much power. There was gonna something I wanted to say. I forgot,
Well,
but
I will say this to the question, and I'll probably get into some pushback personally over this. Who knows? I certainly am no fan of ADOS, and they're no fan of me. Um, the actual ADOS. I don't mean the designation ADOS, which I see people use it. I'm talking the organization ADOS. I wrote a piece. I'm a writer. I wrote a blog piece about ADOS where I was critical. And those individuals in that organization, a number of them, did what they call swarming. They swarmed my Twitter mentions and were very, let's just say, critical. And I'm using that in a polite way. Very critical. I guess I'm on record as saying I find the whole ADOS FBA thing a total crock of crap. Um, I
damn,
think
I don't
it's
like the
make.
ADOS one. I don't want our.
I
I don't want
mean,
black
Yeah,
people's
what they
no.
disagree
identity.
with, though? What was their
I
disagreements?
don't like the ADOS.
What do I
I don't like the
disagree?
term
No,
ADOS.
I
what were their
don't
disagreements
think
with you
that
when
you
you
can.
wrote?
It
Oh,
doesn't make sense.
uh-huh.
Well, the fact that I thought that it was ridiculous that, well, actually, it was actually not a heavy critique. It was a critique. I just said it makes no. Well, basically, I felt that they were the stars. What was it? The Know Nothing Party 2.0, the Order of the Star Spangled Banner. They're essentially a nativist organization. It's just an African American version of nativism, which is what the Know Nothing Party was, the Order of the Star Spangled Banner back in the 19th century. And that's what they are. It's claiming American nationality, which they have, of course, but
Okay.
claiming it as some kind of ethnic, generic force that is independent unto itself and somehow separate from ancestry. I'm like, how can you see yourself as separate when ultimately all roads lead from Africa?
Hold on, let me address Jose.
It's it.
Jose, how come you acting like I don't let you express your opinion? Why are you acting like I don't let you?
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Jose.
I'm
Nobody,
sorry, but that's how.
He's right
nobody
here too.
stop it.
I mean, I'm
Why
sorry,
you let
but
it?
that's how. I mean, that's how I feel. It's just like,
No, go ahead. Nobody's
no, because you
stopping
know
you from
what?
expressing your
At this
opinion.
point, I'm just not gonna. I'm just not gonna join because
Go
I mean,
ahead. Ain't nobody stopping
Jose, come on,
you.
man. Calm down, brother. Though you know that you are always welcome in our space and in our circles, and I love you, man. And I'm happy to even come
Yeah.
onto your platform
If you
too.
want to say
Don't ever
anything,
feel like you are being like excluded, man. So we're sorry if that's how it was feeling like, but no,
Go
wasn't
ahead,
done with
Jose.
intention.
No, I'm
But go for
sorry.
it.
No, but yeah,
I
okay,
get
okay.
overtalked a
First,
lot too on my own.
okay. Now I can, no, I can, to a certain extent, I can understand Anthony's point of view when he says, we shouldn't use the term biracial. But I think what we should do is we should use the terminology that we feel comfortable, whether it be mixed, whether it be mulatto, whether it be MGM, whether it be golden spear, whether it be and please forgive me, like I said, I don't know all the different um, groups that are out there, but I think I find it in a way disrespectful when other people are trying to tell us who we are. So I mean, I didn't understand Anthony's point of view in the beginning, but now I see it now. I mean, everyone should be allowed to identify themselves. It's the same thing. So I think there should be something in the census where there should be like a blank space, and then everyone can just identify themselves as one sees fit. But simply to use putting like biracial when people might not feel that they're biracial or what have you. So I think one solution is there should be a blank space in the census form, and people can be allowed to fill in as they see fit.
I like
Or
that. I like that. I like that a lot,
what do you
actually.
think about just listing all the different categories and then you just check? I'm more inclined to list all the different categories and you check the ones that apply. I'm only going to check one. If I don't really like African American. I like Afro American, but if that's listed, that's what I would check. If it's either going to be Afro American or African American. That's it. That's all I ever check.
I like
But if
that.
you
I
had
like that
biracial, then
idea.
you could go. If you had biracial, now you could break it down by actual race, by the
Yeah.
races you represent. So that way, because really what the United States needs to know is how people are identifying themselves. Just list the categories, get a survey, go, hey, what do you guys want to see on the census? That's where it needs to come to. And then, biracial be one of them. And now you still have the historical designations, black, white, Asian, Asian Pacific Islander, stuff like that, Latino, white Latino, black Latino, all of this stuff. Like check everything because, if you're Latino, you could check. You could theoretically check like at least 3, possibly 4 different designations, right?
Let me
Well,
ask you,
okay,
Kevin. See, what would you feel about having the
okay.
term?
I'm sorry.
What do you, having the term monoracial put on the census?
Uh,
It's a trick question.
I mean, you could throw it in there, but I mean, I don't. I think the historical designation, the current designation that we have right now, and you add something that's, I think monoracial would just kind of. I don't know how. I don't know how that would play out or what that would mean. Because you could everybody could shoot white people could say that. So you still we assume when
But
you
that's
say
how I
you're
feel
white, you're
about
biracial,
biracial.
right? So
That's how I feel
it's
about
inherent in
biracial.
the term, right? If you say you're white, then it's inherent in the term. You're just white, right? But if you're biracial, now you're white in something else, or you're black in something else, or you're
Or you're
Asian in
Asian.
something else.
Yep.
So no, it's inherent in the term. I don't think you need it. I would say you didn't need it because we understand what Afro American is, and that to include drilling it down to black immigrant, black immigrant, and then and to include second generation because that actually makes a difference too. We need to know those numbers. I would like to drill it down to the Nat's ass on this.
Facts. We do need data. We need that
Yes,
in
we
order
collect
to
the
build.
data.
We need
We
that.
need to know. We need to
We need
know.
that.
Who's a current immigrant, who's a first generation, second generation immigrant, and then after that, then people. It's usually about third generation. Everybody's designating themselves. Like, say you're black, right? Then you're going to be by the
Hmm.
time you get to the third generation, which we are on for some people right now. If you're in the 1960s, you have family that showed up here in the 1960s. You're at least on the second or third generation. By the time you get to the third
Hmm.
generation, you can be like, I'm just black, because that's what you're going to be if
Yeah.
you're monoracial, assuming that there's no mixture and none of that stuff, whatever, whatever. And keep in mind, there are people who are, I hate to say light skin, dark skin, whatever, but there are people who are light who identify them because they have 2 black parents and they don't consider themselves mixed. They're gonna have to figure that out. That's another thing that, but if those people identify as something that's biracial, even though they have 2 black parents who identify as black, then that's
Yeah,
going to be
that's more the MGM, the
yeah.
multi-generational
There
mix.
you go. That
Yeah,
needs to be
that's
there. You
MGM.
go. So that's another category. Like I'm just
Yeah,
throwing this stuff out there so
that's
that
true.
way, as you guys move forward with this, then these are the
Yeah.
considerations, and this is what you're going to have to pitch, and then go, okay, look, this is what we need listed on the census, and this is how we're going to explain it, and then these are the definitions that we as a collective agree on. And keep in mind, it's got to be like an 80% solution, meaning that you're going to have at least 80% of the people agree, and there can be a biracial somewhere going, nah, I don't agree with that. Well, okay, right now this is a designation until we change it, or
It does.
until we come up with
Exactly.
something different. But right now, this is
We
the
gotta
Um,
designation.
change it. I agree.
Who's
Go ahead, Jose.
who is
yeah.
this black guy? I
Let's
mean,
let's
this black.
Well, the census
Who
is
is this
racist.
person?
Well, the census is the reason the census is racist in the sense that it's used to determine where resources go, where money goes. So
Mm,
if you have a generally if you historically speaking, if you have a predominantly black population, then they get
ooh,
less
they ain't got
resources.
no money.
If you have a
Mm,
predominantly white population, they get
fuck.
more resources. That's all it is.
Sad.
That would be the where the racism comes from in the census. That's how
The
So
white
let's get rid of
that's
the.
how white people are
look.
usually
So
The
considered.
is that
census
still
is
going on
just a
today?
count of the
Let
U.S. That's all it is. Let's
Let's
be
get
But
rid of
it
the
real.
also goes to
census.
resources, though.
I didn't
Not
know it was
absolutely.
racist. Hold up.
No,
Hold up.
resources.
Well, let's get rid of the census altogether. Fuck it.
I don't think
Well,
it's
you
gonna
gotta have a count.
happen.
You gotta know who's here.
The
I want to know
census
who's here. I want to know
is.
who's in these borders, man.
Hold on. The
True. It's about
census
data.
is the census is part of the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution it's part of the early amendments or the early part of the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution stipulates that there has to be a count of the country every 10 years. So unless you have an amendment that eliminates a census, they're not getting rid of the census. Part of the Constitution of the United States. Sorry.
Have
Okay.
you? Do
um
you? With that statement, do you have any belief that the census has been misused to misdirect resources?
Well, that's why counting is important, and that's why groups fought to get biracial people in general on the census to have them counted.
We
That's
count. We
part of the
matter.
reason, right?
Anybody?
And that's
Hey,
the foundation to it.
anybody want to step down? Cause somebody's trying to come up, but I'm at my 6 people limit. Is anybody trying to step down real quick? No.
I'll be out.
Okay.
I'll be out. All right,
All
peace,
right.
y'all.
Bye,
Peace.
Anthony. Have a good night.
Bye.
good
Good
night,
night.
Anthony. But okay,
Hi,
but the reason. Good
Bungduri.
evening.
Burgundy.
How you doing? Burgundy.
Good.
My bad. How you doing tonight?
Good. All I just want to say is that
Hmm.
I'm white, but I find your conversation to be interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, cool. You got anything to add today? What do you think about? Because I like your comment was interesting about how you said we should get away from whiteness and blackness because both black and white America. So would you like to explain that a little bit? I
Well,
thought that was
I
pretty
guess my
interesting.
point is that the majority of the country is fucked. Like that's just my
Hmm.
view. I think the majority, whether it's whites, blacks, whatever, the people who have a majoritarian mindset are screwed. The people
Mm.
who create the future are successful minorities, and by that is like every
Mm.
society has been ruled over by elite minority. The
True.
plebs of society really don't matter. I mean, I know that sounds fucked up to say, but in truth, it's kind of true. So that's just what I'm trying to say.
That's interesting. What made you feel like? What made you feel like? Oh, America's fucked. What made you feel like that?
I mean, rather it's drugs, rather it's
Drugs.
opioids, crack,
Ooh.
but it's not just that. But I think in the future, a lot of these like complaints, whether it's racial, political, religious, won't matter when automation comes. Like the value of the average
Mm-hmm.
worker is
True.
decreasing. So when a
Facts.
machine is even cheaper to use than a person, then the elites will have no further use for the general population. Why would they?
Mm-hmm. That's facts, and that's something that I kind of always wanted to have a night. Hold on, somebody keeps trying to call me, but have us unite because I was doing the research about like across every single race, the wealth gap is insane. The 1% in every single, no matter if you're white, black, Mexican, Asian, mulatto, all of it. The 1%. and the wealth gap is just insane. So that's something I've always wanted to us, like all the races unite, because they want to keep us all divided, so we don't fight against and change that whole financial
And,
system where we're at the that's something yeah, that's something I do
I mean,
want to
I get
help
that what you're
promote.
saying, but I don't really think it's ever going to happen. I'm just kind of
I
going
know,
at it
right?
like most of society
Real.
is screwed, and I'm not going to go down with the sinking ship, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Just
Right. And what
because
do
they
you?
can't see the light, or they're just going to keep on doing whatever they do. My interest is the people who are going to survive are going to be ones with ultimate power, if that makes sense. Like that,
Hmm.
that's who's going to survive. I mean,
Yep.
maybe that sounds like a very Darwinian thing to say, if that makes
Like,
sense. Like,
like survival of the
survival of the
fittest.
fittest. Yeah,
Hmm.
Right.
but
Well,
that's it.
social
Yeah,
Darwinist, actually
but
Herbert Spencer, who patented social Darwinism.
and
But
you've
yes,
heard,
survival of the fittest.
yeah, you've heard of the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, right?
Hmm.
No, I haven't. I'll look him up after this though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
know him. He was
Yeah, I got
a
a
he
whole
German
book on philosophy
philosopher.
over here in my office, but yeah.
he
Yeah.
believed in the concept of the Untermensch and the Übermensch. Well, the elites do
Yeah,
believe in
this.
that as well, but what a lot of these like white supremacists people get confused is that the general elite does not identify with the white masses, if that makes sense. They view themselves, they want to become the master race, but their idea of the master race is like transhumanism. It's becoming something beyond human. It's the overman. It's the Nietzschean Superman, if that makes sense. That's what they want to
The
achieve.
Ubermensch, the Superman. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
so something
Yeah,
beyond
Could I
man.
say something about that, by the way, really quickly on a related note?
Yeah.
What they don't really understand is that when they really are trying to incorporate like Nazi ideology or talking points, they have to realize that people of that old National Socialist Party did not see themselves as the same as even those such as the French or the Anglos.
Well, you're right. I mean, there's a ranking system with them. Like Nordics were viewed as higher up. Hitler generally liked the English, you know. French were lower, but the French were still higher than, let's say, the Southern Europeans. And then at the bottom, then you had the Slavs, and then Jews. So there was like a ranking system of like
Yeah,
where you would
like
be.
because like, are you familiar with Madison Ford? Because in his books, he had oftentimes talked about how those of like Scandinavian origins were the ones who were at the top.
Yeah, Nordicism.
You mean Madison
Yep,
Grant?
Nordicist supremacy is Madison
Right.
Ford.
You're talking Madison Grant, the passing of the great,
Yeah,
the
Madison
passing
Grant
of
is
the.
what I meant.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
Madison Grant. Sorry.
Madison Grant,
But
the passing of the
when
great race. Yeah.
when I'm using
Yeah.
the term Ubermensch, I'm not really referring to the Nazis. I'm more referring to that they believe the what they're creating is not going to be white. It's going to be something beyond. Like it's going to be people of probably different races as well, elites who is transhuman. They augmented their bodies with something like with
Well, the problem with
machines.
Nietzsche
They're
was that
chasing
he was
immortality. They
misappropriated
want to
by
be
the
immortal
Germans.
Yeah,
gods.
yeah. They want to
Hmm.
be godmen.
Hmm.
The
That's
last
scary.
man on earth, while everyone else has either just kind of died out and they're living their lives as
That's scary.
gods.
Well,
Mm.
but here's the problem. Here's the problem for biracial people, as it is for people who are of various ethnicities and racial groups, is that what history teaches, not only in this country but in other countries, is that race and racism don't go away. That they are always part of the constant. They're always part of what exists in a social context, certainly a political context. And that while I think a lot of thinking is that somehow if people get together and get to know each other, and if they can go past differences and whether it's through marriage or whether it's through friendships or whether it's through other aspects, that somehow this will go away. And the reality is it doesn't go away. Yeah, I mean it maybe lessens to a great degree in certain communities, in certain aspects, but it doesn't go away. It's a constant in the society. So that is something that I always try to stress to people, and especially biracial people. And this is part and parcel of what our problem is in this country. is this country is so inherently racist and so inherently opposed
I
to
mean,
people of mixed
America's pretty
race
fucking retarded, so don't like.
that
For real.
we have
I
this
agree with that.
we have this
We
enormous fight
Excuse me if I can just
against
cut
this and
in,
had it.
please.
Mhm.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
One thing that we have to bear in mind: this country has an extremely long history of not dealing with people who are different very well. I mean, it all started even before the birth of this nation with, as Kevin C like to say, the enslavement of the African people, and then we talking about the mistreatment that we shown that this country has shown regarding the indigenous people, and then many of the people who immigrated from other countries, they have faced discrimination, racism, and things of that nature. And then you go into the 20th century where thousands of Japanese Americans were placed in internment camps for fear that they could have betrayed the United States, um, to go fight for the fight for the enemy. And in the Constitution itself, I mean, a black person was considered three-fifths of a human being. So this country has a long history of not dealing with people who are different very well.
yeah, I agree,
Absolutely.
and even,
Facts. Hmm.
but I also wanted
Right,
to bring
and
up the
that
point.
goes to my point, and that buttresses my point on the nature of this country. I think that's a very good point, Jose, because it buttresses what I had noted about the nature of this. And this is why, was it Jefferson said, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Well, being biracial, being mixed race in this country requires continual vigilance. It requires having to not only stand up for yourself, but possibly stand up for others like you, to care about your status in society, because race and racism aren't going to go away. And you
Yep.
have to be able to do what is in your best interest and possibly in the interest of people like you, if that's possible. And like I said to the guy that was previously here, that's why we're here. That's why we've kind of ended up
Yep.
here on YouTube, at least in this portion of YouTube. We've ended up here because, that's part of how communities come together and how groups come together. People get get involved and they get organized and they fight for their interests. They don't fight for interests that are just generic or common or universal. They fight for interests that are specific to them and about them and will impact them. And I think that's what biracial people have had to do and are doing now to some extent. And that's, because we're in a country, as Jose brings out, that does not treat people who are different, does not treat each other, quote unquote, very well.
Well, it's as far as race goes in this country, it's like a very autistic view of everything. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like where it has to be in neat little boxes and nothing can be different, or unless it really confuses people. If that makes
Exactly. It should
sense.
be like a spectrum. No,
It's a
when it comes
binary view
to
of
it should
race.
be a spectrum. Like when it comes to they view autism on a spectrum, but they don't view race on a spectrum. I think it's interesting.
Well, when
It's
I was
Right,
weird,
saying
but
precisely.
autistic, it's like
hmm
a little kid who's autistic, and he's like separating his peas and his
yeah,
his
true.
beef
That's
and
true.
his
They do do that.
mashed potatoes, and he doesn't want them touching whatsoever, and
Yes,
he's like so
that's
obsessed
so
with it.
true.
That's America with race, pretty much.
Yes, very much. They don't want them each other touching, just segregate and just true. But I want to talk about kind of sparked my interest when you said, like how people want to be like there's these elite psychopaths that want to play God, right? And
Yeah.
what we're dealing with depopulation as well, right? Have you guys read the Georgia Guidestones how they want to get humanity under like 500 million or something like that? And I do think
Well, yeah,
that
I'm familiar with the Georgia
have you heard
Guidestones.
about that? Yeah,
They're
so
no
that's something we're
longer
all dealing
around.
with. like every race.
Well,
I don't think they
yeah.
can like, but it comes full circle because we were talking about rap and hip hop in the beginning, and how
Uh-huh.
possibly they were promoting genocide through the music of just promoting violence and killing. That's like a depopulation tactic, right? So it's something that that
Yeah.
affects us
Well,
because
there
that's something
is
that's
a
promoted in Black culture a lot. So
brutal, if you look at automation, there is a brutal practical reason for wanting to decrease the population. If you take everyone's jobs away and you have a bunch of
oof,
hungry, angry
for
people,
real. Mm.
that's a massive, hungry, starving, who are really angry, and that could create a problem for the elites because that could lead to revolution. Now, a good way to nullify that is to push drugs into their community. Does
Push
that
Well,
make
here's
drugs,
the
sense?
yeah.
problem.
That and white people, no, white people are dealing, like you said. That I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I live mostly around white people, and the drug and the homeless epidemic because they decriminalized drug use, right? So it's like anybody, and then there's a lot of conspiracies that the fentanyl has been released in order to get rid of the homeless population because they don't know what to do with them, and just all this crazy shit. Like yeah, like it affects both. Like there's been it's crazy. It's crazy out here, like with the whole drug epidemic and fentanyl and opioids, and it's insane. So,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
it's
even
insane.
like, where do you think all those cartels got those American military grade weapons from?
You got it from what's his name, the death
United,
merchant.
the United States,
Yeah.
because
Well,
the defense was that apparently they were letting cartels get a hold of American weapons so they could track the weapons. That was their shitty defense for it. But I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
Mexico is always in chaos, it's always going to be dependent on the United States.
Isn't that crazy? Mm. It's it's always some
well,
crazy psychopathic manipulation techniques going on
right.
towards
But
people. It's
again,
crazy.
let me just take this aspect because I feel like I have to correct stuff. The emphasis that you're talking about is an emphasis that is larger in the context to what we as biracial people are dealing with. So when you talk about, oh, these are elites and psychopathic elites, what you're doing is generalizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about some kind of things in a rather, in your view, a systematic way. But our issue, or what we have to deal with as biracial people, isn't the matter of dealing with technocratic elites or
Of
other
course, I'm
kinds
not
of
saying that they
elites
can
per
be dealt
se.
dealt with.
We are, hold on, we as biracial people have to deal with the very real, tangible aspects of how society is structured. So we can't just deal with elites and how they impact everyone. Discussing, and it's certainly nice, but that's not our issue. And that's not simply our problems. Our problems and issues and aspects are very specific, and they
I
are
always
not simply the generalized haze or the generalized problems of
I
society.
always try to keep it balanced
So,
though, because I do like to look at like the bigger picture of things and like, wow, this is something that we all like when it comes to like the elites and like all these crazy stuff, like depopulate, like all these that are going on, like that are affecting all. I like to keep it balanced. I like to see the bigger picture and try to focus on okay, what do we need specifically as a community as well? How do we, increase our well being as biracial people within the system as well too? Because we're underserved community and population within this whole
right,
big picture
certainly
as
we're
well too.
underserved,
So I
but
do like to,
but
yeah,
yeah,
I do
I
to keep
mean,
it
but it's
balanced
not
and
a
look at
matter of
both.
the big picture. It's a matter of looking at the smaller pictures that impact us. That's what's important to
Hmm.
it.
It's
You know
always
what I
starts on an
mean?
individual level. You can't go out there and fix. That's something
Right,
I learned early
right,
on, because in my journey is like you can't go out there and fix the world. The best you could do is fix yourself as an individual and just like try to be the best
well, I think
individual
you
you
could go
can
and
be.
try to fix
And
the world, but yeah, but you do have to look out for yourself as an individual. You may have to
yeah,
fix yourself as an individual, but you have to look out for
exactly.
yourself as an
But starting as
individual
an
and people like
individual
you.
is the best start because so many people just want to look outside of themselves and be like, oh, this is all this stuff, but to not really focus on inside of yourself and what do you have control of to change. And that's
Right.
something that we were talking about earlier too with the whole colonization and decolonizing your mindset. What do you have control of right now to change? Like that is so important to make sure that you focus on what you do have power and control of and kind of just that's why I feel like spirituality is important too, because it's like all this other stuff, like what you don't have power and control of, you kind of have faith. It's either you live in faith or you live in fear, right? So it's like I choose to live in faith, like everything's gonna work out for the best, or I can sit here and live in fear and be scared and
Well, that's
paranoid about
hope. That's not
everything.
faith. That's hope.
That's faith. That's faith. No,
Hope
there's
is
difference
believing
between hope.
everything will work out for the best. That's hope.
There's a
Faith
faith
and
because
hope
it's a
are intertwined,
spiritual.
though,
It's a
Yeah.
Not
spiritual
really.
thing.
but I
It's
won't
like
really
a.
go
It's
there.
like
It's
Separate
a.
not.
aspects. Hope
But
is, well, things will work out. Faith is tied to belief. So it's
it's
a
a belief.
putting
No,
stock
that's a faith.
into some aspect.
That's
That's
my
where faith comes into.
no faith is
So
different.
hope,
Faith,
yes,
because I
that's what I'm
know
saying.
I'm
Faith
not
is
sitting
different
here
from hope.
hoping.
So it's hoping.
I'm just gonna have faith. Like I'm gonna sit here and it's like a spiritual thing. It's like a I gotta have like I know you don't. I know you're atheist. I respect atheism. I totally respect that. But I think like
Well,
to
agnostic, but go ahead.
agnostic. But I do believe that you need to, as a human being, not everybody, of course. You know, everybody's different. It's totally cool. But me personally, I think for me to be healthy, that in order to live in faith, so I'm not sitting here because I've been there. I've lived in like paranoid fear of like the elites and all this crazy. I've been there before, like sitting here worried about like the
Well,
fluoride in
that's
the
a whole other
water.
story. That's a
I've
whole
been
other
there.
story.
The freaking 5G microwaves killing our brain cells and all this
Oh,
shit. Like
well,
I've
that's
been,
a whole other deal.
Well,
I
I don't
totally.
necessarily believe in that, but the one
Oh,
thing I wanted to say is that my point is not really that we can do anything. My point is that I actually don't think I can do anything at all, or anyone really can do anything about it. It's just
hmm
more like the people who are going to survive who are going to be the ones who have tight knit minoritarian communities. You need to kind of get rid of the idea that
yeah,
you can save
the
society
village.
because
Period. Exactly.
this,
We
like,
need to build the
I'm just,
village back. We need that
yeah,
village.
I guess
I agree
so.
with you. Yeah, I
Well, that's
totally
not
agree
And
with
going to
that.
save you either, but I see,
We need to be
well, yeah, the
self-sustainable. Like
point is
that's the
made.
most important thing. We're all dependent on a system that could fall. It's like at any second, and then we're all going to be sitting here hungry and mad and crazy because we're not. We the system's down. So it's like we
Yeah.
do. I do believe in that. We do believe in self-sufficiency of like building, rebuilding that village and being able to like. Yeah, but go ahead, Jose.
Well, I go back to what I said earlier tonight. I mean, I think what needs to be done, there need to be unity within each individual subgroup, with the understanding that there's going to be those that not going to agree to unify with us, and for those that are that mindset, just leave them alone. But I do think, like for example, for mixed peoples uh, to have their own community, they need to unite within their own separate subgroups. Once they're able to do that, they could try to form some sort, at least a loose alliances with other subgroups.
Yes,
But the key is you have to unite within your own subgroups those who are
exactly.
willing to unite with you.
And that's so it's hard work. It's such hard work to unite with your own people. Like I think black people, look, y'all are good about that. When it comes to like injustice or like a white folk doing you wrong, y'all will come together like, in a second. Like it don't matter. Like let one of y'all do me wrong. All y'all coming together uniting. Like it's nothing. And I'm like, that's cool. I think that's good. Like that's something that is cool, but that's something that we don't have as and that's what somebody was telling me about like in the white community. They don't really have that either. They're not gonna all come together just because they're white. Like that's something that don't really
That's
happen.
because that's a distinction.
it,
Whiteness
it's
or
it,
being white is not the same as ethnicity. Like,
Yeah.
that's only seen in distinction to other
I want to
people.
know
So
what
being
you're
white
talking
is seen as a
about.
distinction to other people,
I
as
want to know what you're talking
opposed
about.
to black
Bug
people
Derby, I want to know what you're talking
or
about because you
others.
always talk about like Ellis Island whites. Like you're talking about like
the
the
Ellis Islanders, yeah,
yeah. I want to know
all the
what you're
time.
talking about.
My point is being that the first time I have an ancestor who stepped foot on in Norfolk, America was 1611, right? So I don't really identify with people with white Americans who came here in the 1890s. I don't.
Wow,
Or
really?
1920s. I don't.
No way. That's
I
crazy.
almost have a maybe a little bit of a contempt. Maybe that
No
sounds bad,
way. That is so funny.
Wait a
but
minute. What year was that? 16 what?
You
11.
said 1611.
1611. That's before the Plymouth colony. That's before who
They were
what
here
is
in
that
the
traced to?
1600s. They
Plymouth.
were here.
Yeah, but the 1611 is so 1620 was Plymouth colony. So what's
Jamestown,
the origin there?
Virginia.
So you were
Okay.
OG.
1607
Like
was
you were they were the pilgrims and stuff?
Well, what happened? Okay,
No, that would
my
be
point
Virginia
the
is
that
colony.
would
that
be the Mayflower and the Plymouth colony.
Yeah, so
Okay, my
1607 was
bad.
the Virginia colony, right?
I
You
think
said
so, but
Jamestown.
Because
this
that's when your family moved.
ancestor was named. His name was Stefan Hopkins.
Okay.
First, he came and got shipwrecked on the island of Bermuda in 1609. Then he came to Jamestown, Virginia, as an indentured servant in 1611. But then, after he was done with that, went back to England, and then he came back again on the Mayflower to New England and became a wealthy. What is it? What is the term? Merchant.
Okay.
So that's
Was
what
that was that
happened.
was that post 1620 Mayflower trip or was that 1620 Mayflower?
It might have been. It was either 1620 or post 1620, but
Okay,
he
because
came.
you know
I think.
there were several trips thereafter. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to get an idea. That's
but
just interesting.
my
The-
my point is like the same way that Black Americans will say, "Hey, my ancestors came here 1609, were descended from the slaves. I don't identify with other blacks who maybe came here like just recently in the 1990s." Does that make sense? It's the same thing that I feel.
Wow. What do you feel like the
So
difference?
the difference is that I just feel
Hmm.
like that my ancestors actually fought to create this country, you know?
And they just came over here and
And
just
then
like
then
migrated
and it's
all
like
of a sudden.
it's so stupid. It's like you have these Ellis Islanders and like especially the white nationalist ones, they want to say like they conquered this continent. And like, dude, you came here in the 1920s. Like, what did you conquer? You didn't fight any natives. You didn't do nothing. You know, you're just claiming like things that you think you have accomplished, even though that was my ancestors, not yours.
So that's
Well,
so
yeah,
you
that's not
saying
unusual. That's the kind of attitude of American, being an American as
we
opposed
the
to
best.
being European, which is a distinction that has existed probably since before this country was uh, started or really afterward, where America or the United States are seen as a distinctive, not just nation, but even culture compared to the European,
I agree
compared to where people
partially,
came from
but the
European.
founding fathers
That's
saw
existed,
themselves.
especially with literature, because I'm a somebody who studied literature in college. That's certainly the case with literature. It's this idea of creating and forging an American literature, right? Somebody like even people like Henry James or
Uh,
Edith Wharton, or certainly with somebody like a Mark Twain. Mark Twain with the adventures of Tom Sawyer, and certainly with Huck Finn, very important with Huck Finn, was seen as an American novel and is seen as, certainly by literary scholars, but I think also by others, as the sort of the sort of zenith or the paramount aspect of the great American novel or the American novel as distinct from the European British
I,
novels or French
I,
novels or
I'm
German
not agreeing
novels.
with you, but the interesting thing about the founding fathers is that they saw themselves as being more English than the British. If
Right.
that
No
makes
way.
So
sense.
that's why I say it's a distinction when you look at the whole American versus European distinction. I think it's one that primarily with people of European stock, meaning white people. It's something that existed, I would say, probably in the 1770s and 1776 till about, I don't know, maybe into the 20th century.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
This
crazy. Hmm.
distinction. So when you talk about that, I have seen it. It certainly is the case historically, and it's certainly the case in terms of literarily, in terms of literature. I do see it in those contexts, and probably in a political context as well. But I really do see it in those contexts. I think it's
yeah.
certainly there.
Yeah,
So, how
like
do you racially identify
racially identify,
or
um,
ethnically?
probably
Mhm.
Anglo, like original,
Anglo.
like the English founding stock of the country. That's what I identify with. But
So to me, that's interesting because you say, your family and ancestors were like the original
yeah,
people who
but
came
that's on
to
my
establish
mom's
this
side.
nation.
On
Hmm.
my father's side, my ancestors came 1691 to the
Mm.
Virginia colony and then settled all out through the southern United States. So I have
Hmm.
both Southern Anglo ancestry as well as New England Puritan ancestry as well.
Interesting. But to me, it's
16,
interesting.
1607. That's still close to the development of the United States.
I mean,
So
it's
most
closer.
people, yeah, most historians would put literally the United States as being developed at the end of the Civil War, even though there was a lot of destruction and death,
Yeah, but it's
because
funny
that's
that
the
you
renewal
mentioned the
phase, right?
Civil
But
War.
before then, it was essentially the infrastructure was essentially there. The what you call it, the billions of dollars that was generated from black enslavement was essentially there. So that's the foundation right there. So when you hear black people talk about, that's where that comes from. When black people say, when you hear a black person say, "Well, my ancestors built the country," that's what they're talking about.
Of
That's
course.
So
Like, but my
that's
point,
the reference.
but you see
Yeah,
my
I
And,
see your
reasoning
point
for
but
about
not
the
it's
like,
just
idea of the
interesting to hear
Civil
you
War
say
being the
people at the
uniting of the
1900s
United States.
didn't. Well, you have a different feeling about the folks, the first, second, and third wave Europeans post 1900. It's just interesting to hear some
It
like
is interesting. I've never heard that before. I
because
think that
we're
is
not
very
privy to these
interesting.
conversations. I don't really
Yeah, I'm not
talk about it in
surprised.
that context with white
I've
people.
seen this from a historical point of view. That's why you had, that's why whiteness, quote unquote, ended up being a little bit more malleable because who was considered white was very different. It was the Anglo-Saxon. It was the WASP,
Yeah, white
the
Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
pre-United
That was
States
that was
Protestant,
like a
the
1790 Declaration
Puritan,
or something, right?
the descendants of Puritan, yes, the descendants of those that had come from the original voyages to the quote unquote New World.
although I
And so
will,
this is an unusual. It's historic. I mean, it's stuff that I've seen on a historical basis, and that's why you had, as I mentioned before, you
I just
had
have out there ideas. That's all.
you had the Know Nothing
Love it.
Party, and you had the Order of the
Mm.
Star Spangled Banner. It was this idea of especially Southern Europeans as this alien force, of immigrants from Europe as this alien force. And that same mentality exists today when it comes to immigration. It's just a different group of people that are seen in that context. But the same structure, the same framework is there. It's just shifted to other groups, to other ethnicities, to other races. But you see that in the
Mm.
history of this country.
Like,
Mm.
but does anything that I'm saying make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. We get you.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah,
just like
historically, it's rooted. Yeah.
yeah. So and it's good to make sure that to remember that the people who came to the southern United States and New England would probably not have identified, even though they were both English in ancestry, as the
Hmm.
same people. Like, have you guys heard of the English Civil War?
No, what
Maybe
that
Which
happened in
one?
America?
no English.
Which
No, I
one?
haven't
Like,
heard
The
of that.
Glorious Revolution
Actually,
or which one?
I think it occurred in the 17th century, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, yes. Well, you
Wow.
had Royalist
Mm.
Cavaliers who settled in the southern United States, right? And then you had the Puritans who settled in New England. Well, they hated each other. The
Mm.
Cavaliers were aristocratic English gentry. I suggest you guys should probably look into this, and possibly Albion Seed as well. But what's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, the Cavalier way they talked, their vernacular, very much influenced modern day Ebonics.
Wow. Mm.
Mm.
That's so
Well, that's
interesting.
it.
I love it.
Well, I'm not really surprised. I do know that the Puritans were obviously leaving England because of not only their religious practices, but the political aspect of their religious practices.
Yeah,
And so when you talk
the
about the
Cavaliers are
English
mostly
Civil War,
Anglican.
you have the Glorious Revolution, right? You have like you're referring to the what's it, Cavaliers, the Roundheads. Yeah, interesting. Um,
It is interesting. And okay,
yeah,
guys, I was letting this ride, but I'm gonna start
yeah. I
shutting it
mean, it's
down a
going
little
into other
bit.
areas. I mean, I had to bring up
It's
other.
such
I
a
was a
good
history minor in
conversation.
All
college,
right,
I
that's
so
love
I
good.
it.
That's
had to bring
fine.
up
My phone is on
other
like
areas that
3%
I had to
anyways.
bring
I
up
feel
other
that.
stuff
I
I didn't
wanted to
expect to come up
say
into.
to you, Bogdur, I wanted to say because that's interesting that your ancestors were the ones founding it, and now you're saying, oh, well, it's going to shit now. And I'm like, oh no,
Yes, we have an Irish Catholic as president. It's terrible. I'm
oh
joking.
no.
But my point in saying is that my father's side 1691,
Mhm.
mother's side early 1600s.
We're
Makes
gonna
sense?
have to, yeah, but we're gonna have to. Things are changing in America, right?
Yeah,
For the
and
better,
I
for the
also
worse.
like to
Well,
say
things always change in America.
Things are
There's
always
always
changing.
changed to a
before
certain extent
I
in
leave,
America, but yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
my people already became a minority long ago, way before
Hmm.
way before a bunch of non-whites started moving here. If that makes sense.
Yes.
So like by the time America became like majority German, Italian, Irish, whatever, like the founding stock was already a minority. So it's like I don't even really feel that much ties to this country anymore because to me it doesn't even really exist anymore. If that makes sense, it's just
Wow.
an entity, I guess.
Hmm. It's a corporate entity if you want to be
It's a
Yeah.
nation
specific.
state.
Yeah, pretty
All right,
basically.
my phone is about to
Have a good night.
die.
Thanks for jumping
So
on here. It
All
was
right.
see ya.
interesting talking to you. You have made some
Bye.
great
Yes,
points.
good night.
So have a good
Yeah,
night.
likewise. Yeah, that
All
was a
right.
pretty good. That was a pretty good diversion there. Yeah, you guys
That
kind of
was
got
pretty
away from
interesting.
the whole thing as it relates.
Yeah, it
Not,
was a
not too much,
diversion.
but I
I
mean,
agree.
that
It
was
was a
pretty. That's
diversion.
pretty interesting though. You don't run into too many folks that can
Interesting.
actually go all the way back to the 1600s.
That is
Well,
Yeah,
interesting.
we
actually
know why black people can't do
1400s.
it, but that's just very interesting. I took a history class, right, and
Yeah.
there were a few folks that were able to do what he did, which is trace their history going all the way back to like the colonial era, like the colonial settlers, and there were a few folks in the class who could actually do that. I thought it was pretty interesting. Yeah, black folks, we generally can go only back to the majority can only start their furthest start point or correction, their furthest point is generally the 1870
So
census
true.
because that's
Yep.
when black people first showed up on the census after enslavement. 1865, the Civil War
Mm-hmm.
ends, and now black people actually become part of the census. In the next count
Yep.
5 years later. So, and they show up listed as Negro. That's where you get and I think the one gentleman said, well, he disagrees with the ADOS and the FBA. I look at ADOS and FBA as simply identifying factor, so that way, because that came out of the whole reparations conversation. That's really all it is to me. Is that it's a
Mm-hmm.
way to
Yeah.
trace. It's a way to trace who
Unfortunately,
you're
they
from.
were right. That's
Yeah.
true. But the problem with from the organization, see the title of ADOS is perfectly fine by me. The
Mm.
organization is what I have the issue. Like the
That's
idea of
is that like
ADOS
Black Lives
is
Matter? Like the title is fine, but the organization is the
no, no,
problem.
no, no,
No.
not in that
Black Lives Matter is
context.
completely different, but yeah.
The ideas of if you are using ADOS simply as a way of saying I'm a American black person, that's logical. But what I have is this idea that somehow being ADOS or FBA makes you distinctive, and I'm going only in the sense that your nationality is American, yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
you're like other people. Your ancestors came from somewhere.
Exactly. I
And
agree. And
so in the end of the day, I can't get on board with that kind of ideology, that kind of
Okay, I
good
mean,
mentality.
point. All right, guys. You guys have any final thoughts, Jose? I'm gonna let you go because you said I never let you talk. So go ahead and go, Jose. Go ahead and get your final thoughts
Well,
in.
it was an interesting topic. I thank you for
Hmm.
allowing me in the platform, but
Of course.
sometimes it's kind of hard for me to get my
It's a
point
lot of
across.
people on the. Sorry.
Okay,
I be over
but
talked too sometimes. It's okay. It's all good.
but it was an interesting topic, and when everything is said and done, I'm going to go back to what I said originally,
Hmm.
which is if for mixed people to have a community, they're going to have to unite within their own separate subgroups before they do anything else. If they can't even form a community within their own subgroups, they're not going to be able to join forces with other mixed people. Once they're able to do that, hi James, then they can talk about trying to link up with other mixed groups, sub mixed groups, subgroups, and then
Hmm.
after that, uh, you know, it's possible to try to link up with other people who are outside of mixed people, who 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 are sympathetic to their views. But it all starts with they have to be able to unite within their own individual subgroups.
I agree, and we have to do the hard work of like uniting and working through our own issues and doing a lot of that work to unite and overcoming differences, having the hard conversations that need to be had. It's a lot of hard work. We gotta do it. We gotta cut out the BS. Like we don't got time to sit here and play. We don't got time to play victim. We don't got time to sit here and this is just a lot of things we have to cut out that we can't bring along with us. We can't have certain mindsets and certain, attitudes towards things. Like we gotta really just be committed and not scared to work and do the work and get things done and just move forward and just do what needs to be done and just we can't be scared to have the conversations and be able to stand in our identity, in our truth, and really know who we are. And we have to change and have to be willing to challenge certain beliefs and decolonize our mind and do all these things. Like we have to. There's a lot of work to do. We don't got time to focus on the nonsense and people who are just trying to speak some nonsense that does not relevant to us whatsoever. Who's not really trying to it's just trying to troll our spaces basically. Like that's so irrelevant to me. I'm just like I like talking to people like people who are really actually invested in learning and understanding and trying to really just try to. I really appreciate you, Kevin. I think you're great. Thank you for coming on here tonight. I think it's really refreshing hearing from somebody who's
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah.
I
No
do
issue.
appreciate you a lot. I do want to show you appreciation and respect, and I'm really grateful for you. So, do you guys have any? You have any last closing thoughts?
Yeah, you guys, it's good conversations is what you guys are trying to do. The only thing I would say is
Mm-hmm.
like, I think like we talked about before, you guys are going to have to come up with your ideology, rules, regulations, how you're going to designate all this other stuff and everything else, who's in, who's out, and then expect the resistance from probably white folks and black folks, and then explain to them what it is you're trying to do, so that way you can decrease that resistance. But if people aren't losing anything and you're gaining something, but neither side is losing anything, that's where you're going to get your wins.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it'll
Facts.
make more sense, and it's going to take some time. But I mean, if you guys start now, then 20 years or so, you need less than that. And but then as the younger next generation is produced, then you'll see it'll be just part of a normal thinking, and then you can kind of get away from that whole, well, I'm black and biracial, or it's people trying to throw you in that category when you don't want to be. All right. But the other thing too is, you said, if people voluntarily want to be part of that category as well, then they can be both. That's the other thing, right? Or is it not?
Yes. If they want
Okay,
to, yeah, no problem with
so
that.
yeah, you self-identify, because everybody needs to be able to do that. You need to be able, that's part of self-determination, and moving along, and part of your own, not so much independence but interdependence, moving around in your world and how you want to be recognized. That's your right as an American, as a human, and just doing your thing. So I try to
Facts.
understand it from the perspective of somebody who has different experiences than me, so that way I can listen and learn, and then
I
offer
appreciate you.
something that'll maybe be of use to you in your journey. But hey, thanks for letting me up. Appreciate you.
Of course. Have a great night. And Al, you're bringing the fire tonight, okay? Bringing that
Yeah, I
fire.
didn't
You're bringing
expect
the facts. It was pretty
I
good.
didn't expect to filibuster, as I call it, tonight. I really did it. So
It was pretty good.
I never expect to filibuster, but I was just thinking of one thing. You talk about the subject of FBA culture. The point that was
Mm-hmm.
brought up by the gentleman, I can't remember his name. I'm sorry I didn't get his name. I
And
apologize. I didn't get your name. But about how if you're biracial, you're kind of already begun to separate from culture, right? The point I think in
mm-hmm.
relation to so-called FBA culture is that being biracial means you're separate, but you're also not you're not completely uh, isolated from that culture. You are tied to it. So that's what people need to understand is there is a connection for some biracial people, obviously, to FBA culture. and they're engaged in it. Just like they may be engaged in, if you want to call it FBA culture, like they may be engaged in other cultures. But I wanted to bring up something to sort of finish this out. And when we talk about culture, there's a movie that's out. I don't know if it's already hit theaters called Chevalier, which is about Joseph Bologna. Joseph Bologna was a man born in Guadeloupe to an African mother and a French father. And he ended up going to France where he got educated and became
Hold
a
up, what's the movie
composer.
called? What's
Chevalier,
I
C
gotta see
H
that
E
movie.
V A L I E R. He went to France. He became a musician and a composer. I think he was one of the first composers of African ancestry, classical composers of African ancestry, and swordsman for that matter. He was a number of years.
Wait, who is the person it's about? It's about I
It's
heard of him before.
Joseph
What's his name?
Bologna. Joseph Bologna. His name, I think it's Bouloggne.
Beluni. Bologna. Oh my gosh. Hold on.
And there's some YouTube videos about it. And he was an individual that lived in France in what the 18th century. And at the time of the French Revolution, he was almost killed in the French Revolution, but managed to get by it. Thank goodness. Good for him. Really good for him. But he was a composer and musician. And so I often hear African Americans talk about black excellence, right? And that's
Hmm.
very key. Um, when I think of somebody like Joseph Bologna, I think of, and I don't like using this term, but I'll coin a new phrase: biracial excellence, right? If
Hmm.
people want to say mulatto excellence, mulatto was considered a slur back in France of this day.
Oh
But
really?
mulatto excellence, yeah, it was considered a slur. It
Even
was
in
considered
France?
an insult.
Wow.
Yeah,
I thought
in
that was just
France, from what I
America.
understand. Yeah,
Wow.
it's considered an
Hmm.
insult. But
Wow.
when I cite the cultural aspect, obviously Bologna was working from European cultural context, classical music as
Hmm.
we would know it now, composition, so forth. But I think it can go either way. We're tied to culture, right? We could be tied to FBA culture or African American culture. We can also be tied to European culture, right? But
Yeah.
I want to, when we talk about, you know, being biracial and the importance of being sort of coming together, this is why history is important. It's important to know who people like us were, and that there were
Exactly.
people of not only distinction and talent, but ability, like Joseph Bologna, the Chevalier himself.
I'm trying to
And
find
so
that.
that's what I
Hold
want to,
on.
yeah.
I need you to send me the link or something to that so I could, because I
Well,
just
I
did a
know there's
movie review.
some YouTube videos about him.
I
I
need
don't
to.
know about the movie, but the movie I think is either coming out or has come out in theaters.
I'm
But
gonna email
because
you.
I
You
found
got
out
an
about it
email?
before the movie came out.
Yeah, because I wanted
But
to do. Okay, my next live I'm gonna do, guys. I watched the movie Strange World, and I'm gonna do a movie review of it because it was
mm,
biracial representation of the black
okay,
mother and a white dad, and the little kid was
okay,
biracial. So I wanted
oh,
to do a movie review of it. So I'm gonna do that like on
oh,
Monday, I
okay,
think. So
all right.
I do want to do movie reviews and like so we could see like
Oh, interesting.
representation of us and stuff like that. So
Right,
I do think
but
that's
I just wanted to note that, in terms of this necessity of coming together and making a distinctive community, we have to look back at a part of that would be history and looking back at individuals, whether in this country or other countries,
yeah. I love
like this
historical
Joseph
movies so
Bologna
much.
and Chevalier. So
I think that's
I don't
so
know if this
important.
is going to become a hashtag, but biracial excellence.
I'm here for it.
Some people
I'm
might
here
call it
for it.
mulatto excellence. If you want to do that, fine.
And
I
that's a
don't care.
connection too because one more thing. I think that there's a connection too because black people started it, black excellence, and then biracial people. If we have a lot of black people feel like I feel like they get mad about that. About oh no, why are you trying to
Or
steal our
use another
stuff?
term,
But I don't know. I don't know because I know
biracial
some people do get
accomplishment.
offended when we try something. We could do something else, but I do want to respect black people. If they feel like they're offended if we try to, take like biracial girl
Oh
magic
yeah,
or I
appropriating a
get that.
term.
I totally. So I don't really. feel like we should take their stuff.
I
I
really
guess
don't care.
I don't know. Some people don't
I
care,
don't
right?
really
It's
care.
like
I
whatever.
made my point. I made my point about Joseph Bologna. That's all I
I
care
want to
about.
watch that movie. I'm
I
gonna.
don't care
You got your
about the
email?
hashtag.
Do you have an email, Al?
Do I? Yes.
Okay, is your email in your like description? Your about me because I want to email you because I want to know about.
Um.
I'm trying to look it up. I can't find
Yeah.
it.
No, it's not featured in my. I don't think it's in my. No, it's not in
Can you
my.
put your email in the private chat real quick before I end the live?
Yeah. I guess I can. Hold on.
Thank you.
Mm.
It was a fun live, guys. I love all of my peoples out there. I love everybody, all y'all. It was so fun. The end topic. What main biggest takeaway from this live is yes, we are going to take the best of both cultures, build our own. That's what we're supposed to do. Both worlds and don't let nobody shame you on that. That you're offended or you're this, you're that. No, that's what we're supposed to do. These are both our heritage, both our rights. We're so I don't care how nobody feel about that. Let me look at the okay, hold on. All right, I think my computer is about to die. So we're gonna go ahead and so okay, let's see if I
Okay.
can go live.